with pinpoint accuracy. The Trident II's defining feature is its ability to carry multiple independently targetable reentry vehicles, or MIRVs. Each missile can be equipped with up to 8 W-88 warheads, each delivering a 475 kiloton yield. This means a single missile can obliterate multiple cities or critical military installations in one strike. Deployed aboard Ohio-class submarines, each vessel carries up to 20 Trident II missiles, collectively capable of deploying 2,240 warheads, making it one of the most formidable assets in modern warfare. Can obliterate Ohio-class submarine stealth capabilities and endurance, ensure these missiles remain a persistent threat. Operating silently for months at a time, these vessels are nearly impossible to detect, ensuring the Trident II system's viability even in a first strike scenario. There are roughly 336 Trident II D5 missiles deployed in the U.S. arsenal across these submarines. Consider a scenario where a single Trident II D5 missile, armed with its maximum payload of 8 W-88 warheads, targets a region like Tokyo, one of the world's largest metropolitan areas, with a population of over 37 million.
EVE to me is basically freedom. It's a giant open universe where you can do whatever you want.
On multiple key locations within the region. If all 8 warheads were deployed over Tokyo and its surrounding areas, the fireball from each warhead would cover approximately 3.5 square kilometers, or 1.3 square miles, incinerating densely populated zones. The blast wave from each detonation would destroy buildings up to 5.5 kilometers, or 3.4 miles away, creating a cascading effect of structural collapses across the city. Thermal radiation would cause severe burns and fires within an 8-kilometer or 5-mile radius for each warhead. In total, this multi-target strike could devastate 28 square kilometers or 10.8 square miles per warhead, with overlapping areas amplifying destruction across Tokyo. Casualties could reach 3 million fatalities and 5 million injuries, with infrastructure decimated and chaos spreading throughout the country. China's DF-5 ICBM, a strategic colossus. The Dongfeng 5 or DF-5 intercontinental ballistic missile is a cornerstone of China's nuclear arsenal. Towering at over 106 feet or 32.5 meters and weighing a massive 183 tons, it is among the largest land-based ICBMs ever constructed. Its range of 15,000 kilometers or 9,300 miles places virtually the entire globe within its reach, enabling strikes on targets across the United States, Europe, and Asia. Capable of carrying up to 12 MIRVs, each with a 1 megaton yield, the DF-5 can unleash unparalleled destruction. China is believed to have approximately 20 to 30 DF-5 ICBMs in its arsenal. In a hypothetical scenario where a DF-5 targets Washington, D.C., the combined power of its 12 megaton payload would cause a disaster of unprecedented magnitude. The fireball would obliterate the city center, while the blast wave would extend destruction over a 35-kilometer or 22-mile radius. Casualty estimates surpass 1.5 million fatalities, with millions more injured and displaced. Russia's next-generation ICBM, the RS-28 Sarmat, also known as Satan II, represents a quantum leap in nuclear weaponry. This 3-stage liquid-fueled missile weighs an astonishing 208 tons and can deliver 10 heavy MIRVs or 15 lighter warheads, all independently targetable. Boasting a range exceeding 18,000 kilometers or 11,000 miles, the RS-28 can reach any target on Earth, employing polar trajectories to bypass traditional missile defense systems. Its use of the Fractional Orbital Bombardment System, or FOBS, allows it to briefly enter orbit before re-entering the atmosphere, further complicating interception. As of recent reports, Russia has begun deploying the RS-28 Sarmat in small numbers, with estimates indicating around 10 to 20 RS-28 Sarmat missiles in service or planned for deployment in the next few years. Reports suggest the RS-28 could carry a 50 megaton payload, rivaling the infamous Tsar Bomba, the most powerful nuclear device ever detonated. If a Sarmat were to target New York City with such a payload, the devastation would be incomprehensible. The Fireball would span 83 square kilometers or 32 square miles, while thermal radiation would inflict third-degree burns within a 60-kilometer or 37-mile radius. Fatalities could exceed 7 million, with millions more displaced and injured. In total, if multiple weapons from these systems were deployed across different regions in a nuclear conflict, global fatalities could easily exceed 100 million. The devastating aftermath would not only be measured in immediate loss of life, but in long-term environmental destruction, climate disruption, and economic collapse, and the breakdown of social and political systems worldwide. The use of nuclear weapons would result in no true winners, only untold suffering, irreversible damage, and a legacy of despair. The reality of nuclear war is that it threatens the very survival of human civilization, making the global effort for disarmament and strategic deterrence critical to preserving peace. The devastating potential of these weapons underscores the necessity of diplomatic solutions and the need for continued dialogue to ensure that such catastrophic scenarios remain nothing more than grim, hypothetical examples, rather than a terrible reality. Russia maintains the most formidable nuclear arsenal on Earth, a core element of its strategic doctrine and global power status. With over 5,800 nuclear warheads and a complete nuclear triad, Moscow holds the capability to inflict catastrophic damage anywhere on the planet. But in a hypothetical all-out war, where the United States and its allies are forced to completely destroy Russia's nuclear forces, modern technology, superior intelligence, and military might make that objective theoretically achievable, though with immense risk. Russia's nuclear triad is composed of land-based intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, or SLBMs, and long-range bombers armed with nuclear cruise missiles. The land-based component includes silo-based systems such as the RS-28 Sarmat, and mobile ICBMs like the Topol-M and RS-24 Yars. These are deployed across known missile fields in regions such as Kozelsk, Tatashevo, and Dombarovsky. The sea-based deterrent consists of Borei-class ballistic missile submarines, each carrying up to 16 RSM-56 Bulava SLBMs. These submarines patrol the Arctic, Pacific, and Barents Sea, operating from bastions near bases like Gadzhievo and Vilyuchinsk. The air-based leg involves Tu-95MS and Tu-160 strategic bombers, which can launch Kh-102 nuclear cruise missiles from deep within Russian airspace. With around 1,600 warheads ready to launch and thousands more in reserve or storage, this threat is immense, but not indestructible. Destroying Russia's nuclear arsenal would require a devastating first strike, designed to eliminate key components of the triad before they could be activated. The most accessible and vulnerable targets are the fixed ICBM silos. These can be struck by submarine-launched Trident II D5 missiles, each equipped with multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles, or MIRVs, capable of hitting multiple silos in a single volley. U.S. Air Force stealth bombers like the B-2 or the upcoming B-21 Raider could penetrate Russian airspace and drop GBU-57AB massive ordnance penetrator bombs, powerful enough to destroy deeply buried missile bunkers. Mobile launchers, such as the Yars and Topol-M, present a greater challenge due to their mobility, but satellite and drone surveillance make them trackable. Once located, they could be destroyed using hypersonic missiles such as the AGM-138A Arrow, or tactical nuclear strikes delivered by stealth fighters such as the F-35 or the F-15EX. Russia's long-range bombers, including the Tu-160 Blackjack and Tu-95MS Bear, are critical to its nuclear delivery capability. These bombers are capable of launching long-range cruise missiles like the Kh-102 from deep within Russian airspace, making them a vital part of the Kremlin's second strike doctrine. However, they're also highly vulnerable while parked on the ground. Recent events have already demonstrated that even heavily guarded air bases are not immune. Ukrainian Special Operations Forces carried out successful sabotage missions deep inside Russian territory, destroying multiple strategic bombers parked at Engels and Solsky air bases. These operations used an ingenious method. FPV, or first-person view kamikaze drones, disassembled and smuggled inside truck trailers, were secretly assembled near the target area. The trailers themselves acted as mobile launch pads, allowing the drones to strike their targets from close range while avoiding radar detection. These attacks showcase that even Russia's most prized nuclear delivery platforms could be taken out with low-cost, high-ingenuity tactics. Strategic air bases across Russia, Engels, Olenya, Ukrainka, and Tchaikovka, would be struck simultaneously using long-range cruise missiles like the AGM-158 JASSM-ER, stealth bombers, and covert drone assaults. Runways, fuel depots, aircraft shelters, and command infrastructure would be systematically destroyed. Western stealth fighters, such as the F-22 and F-35, would ensure air superiority, intercepting any bombers that managed to take off before they reach cruise missile launch range. The destruction of the strategic bomber fleet, already shown to be possible by unconventional means, would eliminate 1/3 of the Russian nuclear triad in the first hours of war. Russia's nuclear submarines are the most survivable leg of its triad. Borei-class SSBNs, each capable of launching dozens of SLBMs, operate beneath Arctic ice or in bastion zones guarded by the Russian Navy. But the U.S. Navy's advanced anti-submarine warfare capabilities are designed for exactly this challenge. Attack submarines, like the Seawolf class and the Virginia class, would shadow and intercept Russian SSBNs at sea. Maritime patrol aircraft, such as the P-8A Poseidon, equipped with sonobuoys and torpedoes, would blanket strategic zones near Russian naval bases. Pre-positioned underwater drones and undersea sensor networks in key choke points like the GIUK Gap, Greenland, Iceland, UK, could alert U.S. forces to submarine movement. If coordinated properly, this network could eliminate Russian SSBNs before they ever leave safe waters. Even with a perfect first strike, it's plausible that a handful of Russian missiles or bombers might survive and launch a retaliatory strike. To deal with this, the U.S. relies on layered missile defense systems. The Ground-Based Midcourse Defense, or GMD system, with interceptors stationed in Alaska and California, is designed to destroy ICBMs during their mid-course flight through space. Meanwhile, U.S. Navy Aegis-equipped destroyers armed with SM-3 interceptors.
I loved coming to Sheetz because
this is 10 out of 10.
That is something else.
The bathroom here is so clean.
definitely check out that made-to-order food. You know what I'm saying?
So friendly. Sheetz is dope. Sheetz is definitely dope.
These systems offer an effective shield against limited nuclear retaliation, especially after most of the Russian arsenal has already been destroyed. A final phase of this campaign would involve removing the individuals and infrastructure that give the nuclear arsenal its power: Russia's leadership. The President, Minister of Defense, General Staff, and key strategic force commanders are essential to the authorization and execution of any nuclear launch. Cruise missile strikes could target government bunkers in and around the Kremlin. Advanced intelligence assets would locate mobile command centers or secure shelters. Special operations forces, coordinated with airstrikes and cyber disruption, could physically eliminate or isolate the decision makers, preventing any remaining launch orders from being issued. Without leadership, communications, or access to launch codes, the remaining fragments of the Russian nuclear arsenal would become inert. Civilization looks stable. Planes fly on schedule, markets open daily, Electricity flows at the flick of a switch. But all this depends on interconnected systems: energy, food, transport, communication. Destroy just a few nodes, and the entire structure begins to crumble. Now add nuclear weapons to that equation. With enough firepower to incinerate cities, poison the atmosphere, and block out the sun, nuclear arms don't need to destroy every target to end civilization. They just need to cause enough disruption that the rest unravels on its own. So the real question is, how many nuclear warheads would it take to tip humanity into collapse? Let's start small, one warhead. Take the W-88 thermonuclear warhead, commonly deployed on U.S. Trident II D5 submarine-launched ballistic missiles, or SLBMs. With a yield of 475 kilotons, it's roughly 32 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima in 1945. When detonated over a major city, a single W-88 can vaporize everything within a 1.5-kilometer radius. Now, consider that a single Ohio-class SSBN, or nuclear submarine, can carry up to 20 Trident II missiles, each armed with up to 8 independently targetable reentry vehicles, or MIRVs, or warheads. That's up to 160 warheads from one submarine, each capable of striking a separate target. One submarine, 100 cities gone, civilization crippled. And the US has 14 of these strategic missile subs. Russia fields Borei-class and Delta IV-class SSBNs carrying R-29 RMU Sineva or RSM-56 Bulava missiles, each with up to 6 MIRVs and yields between 100 to 900 kilotons. Already, we're well past the number needed to end modern life. The terrifying thing is that these weapons weren't built to win wars. They were built to prevent them, through the doctrine of mutually assured destruction. Here's how it works. You launch nukes at me. Before they even land, I detect and launch my own. We both die, no winners, only ruin. To make MAD work, each side must always have enough survivable second strike capability. That means ICBMs in hardened silos, like the US Minuteman III, with 475 to 1,200 kiloton yields. SLBMs aboard stealthy submarines, like the Bulava or Trident II. And air-launched cruise missiles, or ALCMs, like the US AGM-86B, with W-81 warhead, 150 to 300 kilotons. This triad ensures that even if 90% of your forces are destroyed, you can still retaliate and wipe the enemy out. But here's the dark twist. The very design of nuclear deterrence ensures that if a large-scale exchange starts, no system survives intact. According to numerous studies, including by Princeton's Program on Science and Global Security and Rutgers University, the number of warheads needed to end civilization is not in the thousands. It's between 100 and 300. That's enough to hit the world's top 150 economic and logistical centers, incinerate major population, tech, and food hubs, collapse the financial system by destroying cities like New York, London, Frankfurt, and Tokyo, disrupt global transport and energy supply, and trigger mass famine due to agricultural disruption. Most alarming, just 150 warheads igniting urban firestorms could inject 5 million tons of soot into the stratosphere, reducing sunlight and triggering nuclear winter. Let's talk numbers. U.S. arsenal: W-76-1, 100 kiloton, and W-88, 475 kiloton warheads on Trident II SLBMs. Minuteman III ICBMs, typically 300 to 475 kilotons, W-78 or W-87 warheads. AGM-86 ALCMs, 150 kiloton W-81 warheads on B-52 bombers, and B-61-12 gravity bombs, with a variable yield of 0.3 to 50 kilotons, aircraft-delivered, precision-guided. Russian arsenal: RS-24 Yars ICBMs, MIRVed with 4 to 6 warheads up to 500 to 800 kilotons each. RSM-56 Bulava SLBMs, MIRVed with 6 warheads, 100 to 150 kilotons each. KH-101 cruise missiles, conventional and nuclear variants. And R-36M2 Satan ICBMs, capable of carrying 10 warheads up to 1 megaton each, even with conservative targeting. Assuming 2 warheads per city to ensure redundancy, 200 warheads could obliterate 100 major cities across North America, Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. The result? Collapse of global civilization through infrastructure annihilation, governance failure, climate disruption, and famine. 150 to 200 detonations over cities release enough soot to block 10 to 20% of sunlight globally. Global temperatures could drop by 3 to 8 degrees Celsius for up to a decade. Crops like wheat, rice, and corn would fail worldwide due to shortened growing seasons and colder weather. Over 2 billion people could face starvation, primarily in developing countries but also in industrialized nations. That means a regional war, say India and Pakistan exchanging 100 warheads, could kill more people globally than the immediate blasts. Despite decades of arms control, there are still around 12,500 nuclear warheads globally. Russia has about 5,900. The United States has about 5,200. China has about 500 and rapidly expanding. France has around 290, the United Kingdom around 225, and India, Pakistan, Israel, and North Korea around 600 combined. But again, it only takes a tiny fraction of these to collapse the world system. Just 3 to 5%, about 300 to 400 warheads, could effectively end modern civilization. It's not the number of warheads that matters, it's the illusion of control. We've built tools that can erase history and trusted them to flawed systems, unstable politics, and aging infrastructure. The number of warheads needed to end civilization? Somewhere between 100 and 300. The number we have? 12,500. The number that could be launched due to a miscalculation? 1. And that would be enough to end it all.
Nuclear submarines are some of the most lethal vessels in the world. When it seems so risky to have miniature nuclear reactors and earth-shattering weapons on board, why would you want them? Well, because they offer massive advantages when stalking and avoiding an enemy, and we're going to take a closer look at what these are. Firstly, let's look at what a nuclear submarine is. The U.S. Navy's latest sub is the Virginia-class submarine. This is manufactured by American aerospace and defense company General Dynamics. It's gone through several iterations, but is typically powered by a single nuclear reactor and can travel at more than 25 knots. The crew includes 15 officers and 117 enlisted personnel. The purpose of the subs is for anti-submarine warfare and intelligence gathering missions. The Virginia class is powered by a 210 megawatt pressurized water nuclear reactor, which is itself powered by enriched uranium fuel. The subs are powered by these onboard reactors and produce energy by splitting atoms to create heat. This is then used to make steam for turbines that generate electricity to power the movement of the vessel and keep all the internal systems working. To create this all-important steam, the sub pulls in seawater and purifies it using a desalination process. A side effect of this clean water is that it's also used for drinking, the creation of oxygen through hydrolysis, and for scrubbing CO2 and other contaminants out of the air. Diesel-powered subs at first appear to have an advantage over nuclear as they are smaller and run more quietly. This means they can easily slip into shallow waters along coasts or in river estuaries where they are harder to detect. But diesel engines require oxygen for combustion and produce exhaust gases, including carbon dioxide, which needs to be released through a process called snorting. Oxygen generators can assist by producing oxygen from water through electrolysis, but crucially, non-nuclear submarines still need to surface to replenish their oxygen supplies for both the crew and engines. The subs also use diesel generators to charge batteries, which then use the electricity stored in them to run a motor. Just with any battery, however, they go flat. To recharge, they need to surface and do something called snorkeling, bringing in air to run generators. This makes them vulnerable as they can be spotted from the sky or by submarine hunting ships. However, one of the biggest advantages of nuclear is that the reactor does not have to be refueled over its 30-year lifespan. This means the nuclear sub doesn't need to come up for air in the same way. The only thing that holds it back is the needs of the crew and running out of fuel. A sub that can be at depths for longer is one that can remain out of enemy sight for longer and can also dive deeper into enemy territory without planning to surface. Another big advantage is speed. Current diesel submarines are also limited to slow speeds of 20 knots or around 37 kilometers per hour. With the introduction of nuclear power, previously slow The technology has been developed to such a point that in 2009, British and French nuclear subs carrying ballistic missiles accidentally ran into each other in the Atlantic Ocean. As for safety concerns, these are no more greater than a traditional sub. There are no known nuclear reactor meltdowns involving submarines. When things go wrong, it's usually for the reasons any sub can run into trouble, because of water depth and pressure or equipment malfunctions. The nuclear risk is well understood and closely managed by all navies that own a nuclear vessel. The nuclear sub was developed in the Cold War era, when they would often have nuclear missiles on board as a deterrent to warfare. Now, in the post-Cold War era, the weapons may have changed, but the threat to the enemy remains. In fact, that threat to the enemy is arguably greater, as these subs are now equipped with weapons they're more likely to use. They are likelier to be equipped with Tomahawk missiles that have conventional explosive payloads than with nuclear missiles they'll likely never fire. For example, each Ohio-class sub, which is capable of carrying nuclear Trident missiles, can carry 154 Tomahawk cruise missiles, 50% more than U.S. guided missile destroyers pack and almost 4 times what the U.S. Navy's newest attack subs are armed with. Each of these Tomahawks can carry up to a 1,000-pound high-explosive warhead. As we've already explored, a submarine powered by onboard nuclear reactors has a nearly limitless range and superior maneuverability. Add to this the fact that it can be placed in far-flung waters across the globe with no need to surface except for crew provisions every 3 months or so. This means at least 6 international navies, the US, Russia, Great Britain, France, China, and India, all have nuclear submarines in their fleets. A massive benefit of these subs is the ability to launch a hugely destructive missile before the enemy. A nuclear submarine means that it's powered by a nuclear reactor, not because it necessarily has nuclear warheads on board. But if they do have these kinds of weapons on board, they'll be able to launch them faster than their land-based equivalent. Submarine-launched missiles strike their targets with a nuclear payload in only 15 minutes. Land-based missiles take 30 minutes to reach their destination. Timeliness is a massive advantage if you're attempting to annihilate a foe with an overwhelming first strike. A modern nuclear-powered attack submarine can simultaneously carry torpedoes, land attack cruise missiles, special forces personnel, and even UAVs. This allows it to undertake numerous types of missions on demand without needing to return to base and reconfigure first. Australia is the latest nation to invest in nuclear subs. They abandoned a contract with the French for conventional diesel-powered equivalents. They've most likely done this because of the threat from China. The new subs are likely to be operated to seek and destroy enemy submarines and surface ships, protect power ashore with Tomahawk cruise missiles and special operations forces, carry out intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance missions, support battle group operations, and engage in mine warfare, all of which can be done by nuclear subs faster and for longer. Although the Cold War has ended, it doesn't mean that nuclear subs aren't still incredibly useful. Their lack of need to come to the surface has huge advantages over more conventional vessels, which means they are more likely to evade the enemy and then destroy them if they come face to face with an adversary.
Imagine a single weapon with the power to annihilate an entire city in seconds. Now imagine thousands of them spread across the Earth, deep underground, silently moving through the oceans, or high above in stealth aircraft. This is not the plot of a dystopian thriller. This is the current reality of America's nuclear arsenal. And right now, the United States is spending more than $1 trillion to upgrade it. Why? Because the Cold War relics that have protected the U.S. for decades are aging. Some of them were built in the 1970s, and while they still function, there's a growing fear among military planners. What if they fail when it matters most? In a world where Russia threatens nuclear escalation in Europe, China expands its warhead stockpile, and North Korea tests ICBMs at will, Washington is determined to ensure that its nuclear forces remain lethal, invisible, and unstoppable. America's nuclear deterrent is built on 3 platforms: intercontinental ballistic missiles, strategic bombers, and ballistic missile submarines. Known as the nuclear triad, this structure ensures that if one leg is destroyed in a surprise attack, the others can still retaliate with devastating force. The triad's power lies in its redundancy. Each part serves a distinct role, and all are currently undergoing massive upgrades. Buried across the plains of Montana, Wyoming, and North Dakota are 400 Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missiles. Each of these silent sentinels can launch a thermonuclear warhead over 13,000 kilometers, reaching any major city on Earth in under 30 minutes. Deployed since the 1970s, the Minuteman III has been upgraded over the decades, but it's showing its age. That's why the Pentagon has greenlit the LGM-35A Sentinel, a new ICBM designed to replace the Minuteman over the next decade. Built by Northrop Grumman, the Sentinel promises increased speed, precision, and survivability, particularly against next-gen missile defense systems like Russia's S-500 or China's hypersonic interceptors. Each Sentinel missile will sit in a hardened underground silo and be capable of launching in under 5 minutes from a presidential command. Once airborne, it cannot be recalled. The estimated cost of replacing the Minuteman system with the Sentinel program alone exceeds $100 billion, a fraction of the full modernization budget. Unlike missiles in silos, nuclear-capable bombers offer flexibility. They can be launched in a crisis, loiter near the enemy's border, then be recalled or rerouted if diplomacy prevails. But if war breaks out, they deliver hell from above. America currently deploys 2 nuclear-capable bombers, the B-52 Stratofortress and the B-2 Spirit. The B-52 is a Cold War workhorse, first flown in 1952. Despite its age, it's still feared worldwide. Thanks to modern upgrades, the B-52 can carry AGM-86B air-launched cruise missiles, or ALCMs, each armed with a nuclear warhead and capable of flying over 2,500 kilometers to strike distant targets with high accuracy. The stealthy B-2 Spirit, on the other hand, can sneak deep into enemy airspace without being detected by radar. It carries B-61 and B-83 nuclear gravity bombs, capable of precision strikes against hardened bunkers or strategic infrastructure. But the real game changer is coming soon. The B-21 Raider, a next-generation stealth bomber designed to operate in future high-threat environments. The B-21 is being built with advanced materials, AI-assisted mission systems, and stealth features that make it nearly invisible to current radar technologies. Each B-21 bomber is projected to cost $700 million. The Air Force plans to buy at least 100. Complementing these bombers is the B-61-12, a new precision-guided nuclear bomb with an adjustable yield ranging from 0.3 to 50 kilotons. Fitted with GPS and tailkit guidance, the B-61-12 transforms gravity bombs into high-accuracy strike weapons, usable in tactical or strategic scenarios. If the land and air legs are visible symbols of nuclear might, the sea leg is its silent assassin. The United States operates 14 Ohio-class ballistic missile submarines, or SSBNs. Each of these giants carries 20 Trident II D5 submarine-launched ballistic missiles, or SLBMs. A single Trident can travel over 12,000 kilometers and carry multiple independently targeted reentry vehicles, or MIRVs, each with a W-76 or W-88 nuclear warhead. At any given moment, at least 4 nuclear submarines are silently patrolling under the oceans, ready to launch within minutes of receiving a launch order. Their precise locations are unknown even to most in the military, making them nearly impossible to preemptively destroy. But even these machines are aging. To replace them, the Navy is building the Columbia-class submarine. Slated to begin patrols in the early 2030s, the Columbia-class will be quieter, more survivable, and require fewer midlife overhauls. Each new boat is expected to cost $9 billion or more. The full program, 12 submarines, would cost around $132 billion. Once deployed, these vessels will carry the bulk of America's nuclear deterrent well into the 2080s. If an enemy missile is detected by U.S. early warning satellites, the president has 6 to 12 minutes to make a decision. That decision, launch or absorb, triggers a precise chain of command. Should the order to retaliate be given, ICBMs are launched within minutes. Submarines respond simultaneously, firing SLBMs from underwater. Strategic bombers take off from air bases around the country. The sky and sea become weapons platforms, delivering hundreds of warheads across the globe in under half an hour. Each warhead detonation could kill tens or hundreds of thousands. Cities like Moscow, Beijing, Pyongyang, or Tehran would be vaporized. Fallout would poison the skies. Fires would burn for weeks. The global economy would collapse. Even a limited nuclear war, say 100 warheads exchanged between 2 nations, would be enough to block out sunlight, crash crop yields, and trigger a decade-long nuclear winter. Only one person in the United States can legally authorize the use of nuclear weapons.
Playing on iPhone? Now you can play Unlocked on PC with Google Play Games. Unlock bigger screens and better controls for even sweeter battles. Go play on PC with Google Play Games. Download now.
No committee. No recall once the missiles fly. At over $1 trillion, America's nuclear modernization effort is one of the most expensive and ambitious projects in military history. The U.S. nuclear arsenal isn't just a set of weapons. It's a global signal, a warning to adversaries that aggression will be met with unimaginable force. When most people imagine the end of the world, they see a flash in the sky. Nuclear fire, mushroom clouds, entire cities obliterated in seconds. Humanity has lived under that shadow since 1945. But what if the apocalypse didn't come with a bang? What if it came quietly? On the breath of a stranger in a subway car, in a handshake at the airport, in a cough on an elevator? What if the next world war isn't fought with missiles and tanks, but with microbes? This isn't science fiction. Biological warfare is a threat so real, so immediate, that it might eclipse even nuclear war. Because while a nuclear bomb destroys a city once, a virus can keep multiplying, leaping from person to person, silently spreading until it topples nations. Think about this. The 1918 Spanish flu killed up to 50 million people, more than World War I itself. That virus wasn't engineered, it wasn't weaponized, and it spread in a world without modern air travel. Today, with 4.5 billion airline passengers per year, a single infected traveler could trigger a global pandemic in days. And modern biotechnology means we're no longer talking about nature's accidents. We're talking about engineered superviruses designed to spread faster, kill harder, and resist every treatment we have. Here's the chilling difference. A nuclear bomb is loud. You see the blast. You know you're under attack. But a biological weapon is invisible. You don't even know the war has started until the hospitals overflow. History has already given us warnings. In 1950, the U.S. Navy sprayed bacteria into San Francisco Bay in Operation Sea Spray to test how far pathogens could drift. Within days, people reported strange infections. In 1942, Britain tested anthrax bombs on Greenard Island in Scotland. The soil remained contaminated for half a century. In 1979, a Soviet anthrax facility in Sverdlovsk accidentally leaked spores into the air, killing at least 66 people, though Western intelligence believes the toll was much higher. These weren't fiction. They were real experiments, real accidents, and real casualties. But those were crude compared to what's possible now. With CRISPR gene editing and synthetic biology, scientists can cut, splice, and design viruses like Lego bricks. A pathogen can be engineered to spread like the flu, but kill like Ebola. Others can be modified to resist vaccines or antivirals, ensuring no existing treatment works. Some researchers even warn about ethnic bioweapons, pathogens tailored to exploit genetic differences in populations. Imagine a virus that doesn't just kill, but selectively kills. Still think nuclear war is the worst-case scenario? Let's run a thought experiment. Imagine an engineered pathogen released in New York City's subway during morning rush hour. Day 1. Patient 0 boards a crowded train. He feels fine. He coughs once. Within minutes, dozens inhale the virus. By the end of the day, hundreds are exposed. Day 3. Hospitals report clusters of patients with flu-like symptoms. Doctors assume it's seasonal influenza. No red flags. Meanwhile, travelers leave JFK, Newark, and LaGuardia airports, infected but unaware, heading to London, Tokyo, Dubai, and Sao Paulo. Day 5. The first patients die. But they don't just die. They deteriorate with terrifying speed. High fever, respiratory failure, neurological collapse. Doctors realize this isn't the flu. It's something new, something engineered. Day 7. Panic. Social media explodes with rumors, conspiracy theories, and fake cures. Pharmacies run out of basic medicines. Grocery stores are looted. Day 10. Governments impose quarantines, martial law in some districts. But compliance is patchy. Some refuse, others flee, spreading the virus further. Day 14. Infections appear worldwide. London, Delhi, Sydney, Mexico City. Panic spreads faster than the pathogen. Stock markets crash. Airlines collapse. Borders close. But the virus has already won. It hitched rides on people who moved before anyone knew it existed. Day 30. The death toll climbs into the millions. Hospitals worldwide collapse. Food supplies break down. Military units report mass sickness. And in the background, something even more dangerous brews. Countries begin to suspect each other. Who released it? Was it China? The US? A terrorist group? Or was it just an accident? Miscalculation could lead to retaliation. Retaliation could spiral into conventional war. And in the chaos, a nuclear strike could be launched by mistake. This isn't fantasy. Simulations run by the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security found that a smallpox-like outbreak could kill 150 million people in a year, even with modern medicine. That's more than any nuclear exchange short of all-out apocalypse. The real nightmare is that bioweapons don't even need to be lethal to win. Imagine a virus designed not to kill, but to sterilize. A silent weapon that ensures a rival population dwindles over generations. That's war without a single shot fired. War waged in DNA itself. Unlike nuclear bombs, which require uranium enrichment plants and missile silos, bioweapons can fit in a vial and a backpack. Now, pause and ask yourself, would you even know if one had been released? That's the horror. A nuclear detonation is obvious, but a virus? You'd think it was flu season until it was too late. By the time leaders realized what was happening, it could already be everywhere. And unlike nuclear fallout, which is localized, a pathogen doesn't stop at city limits. Borders mean nothing. Armies can't fight it. Tanks can't roll against it. Missiles can't shoot it down. And yet, most governments are still far more prepared for nuclear war than biological war. The U.S. has missile defense systems, underground bunkers, and nuclear retaliation plans. But against a fast-moving engineered virus, we have limited vaccine stockpiles, fragile hospital systems, and no global coordination. There's another layer most people miss. Bioweapons are almost impossible to attribute. If a nuclear missile hits, you can trace the launch. Satellites, radars, flight paths, it's obvious who fired. But if a virus emerges, how do you know? Was it an accident in a lab? Was it terrorism? Was it natural? That ambiguity is dangerous, because in the fog of confusion, nations might assume the worst. And once nuclear powers start blaming each other, the escalation ladder is short. So ask yourself this: could the next world war be fought not with bombs, but with breath? Could the next apocalypse come from a cough, not a missile? It's not just possible, it's likely. Nature alone has produced killers that dwarfed wars. The Black Death in the 14th century wiped out a third of Europe. That was without gene editing, without labs, without intent. If nature can do that, what could human ingenuity unleash? The scariest part of this story isn't if it happens. The scariest part is when, and whether we'll even recognize the threat before it's too late. The very idea of a nuclear blast triggers fear. It's a catastrophic force unlike any other, capable of leveling entire cities in seconds and leaving behind deadly radioactive fallout that contaminates the environment for years. Nuclear weapons unleash energy equivalent to tens of thousands, even millions of tons of TNT. The largest ever detonated was the Tsar Bomba, a Soviet hydrogen bomb with a staggering yield of 50 megatons, over 3,000 times the explosive power of the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Understanding this overwhelming power highlights the urgency and necessity of knowing how to survive such a disaster. Picture waking up on an ordinary day in the United States. Then the unthinkable happens. A missile is detected heading toward a major U.S. city, New York, Los Angeles, or Washington, D.C. Within minutes, the National Emergency Alert System sounds a warning across all devices. Outside your window, a blinding flash, brighter than the sun, suddenly lights the sky before the Earth shakes violently from the blast wave. This is not a distant nightmare, but a plausible reality in today's volatile world. In such a crisis, every second counts. Knowing exactly how to respond can save your life. Understanding the types of nuclear weapons potentially deployed helps frame the scale and nature of the destruction you could face. One of the most feared is Russia's RS-28 Sarmat, known as Satan II, a heavy intercontinental ballistic missile equipped with multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles, possibly carrying 10 or more warheads. Each warhead's explosive yield is estimated between 100 and 750 kilotons, and the missile's global range exceeds 11,000 kilometers. The destructive force of a single warhead this size can incinerate everything within several kilometers of ground zero and cause severe damage tens of kilometers away. The United States itself maintains versatile nuclear weapons like the B-61 nuclear bomb, an air-delivered gravity bomb with variable yields, ranging from as low as 0.3 kilotons for tactical use up to 340 kilotons for strategic targets. These bombs can be deployed by fighter jets or bombers to strike military bases or infrastructure, producing localized but deadly LBMs. With an approximate yield of 475 kilotons, it is capable of destroying large metropolitan areas. The stealth and survivability of Ohio-class submarines carrying these weapons ensure the U.S. retains second strike capabilities. A nuclear explosion produces a blinding flash of light so intense it can cause permanent blindness if viewed directly. Seconds later, a supersonic blast wave follows, demolishing buildings, hurling debris, and causing fatal injuries across vast areas. This initial blast is accompanied by lethal gamma and neutron radiation. While the immediate radiation is fatal near the explosion site, the more enduring danger is radioactive fallout. Microscopic particles contaminated with radioactive material that settle over wide regions, poisoning air, water, and soil. Survival begins with preparation. Knowing your risk and planning accordingly can save your life. Designate a fallout shelter in your home or community, ideally an underground basement or an interior room with thick walls and minimal windows. Such locations offer crucial shielding from radiation. Prepare an emergency kit stocked with essentials, including at least 1 gallon of water per person per day for 3 days, non-perishable food, a battery-powered or hand-crank radio to receive emergency broadcasts, flashlights with extra batteries, a first aid kit, dust masks or respirators to filter radioactive particles, plastic sheeting and duct tape to seal windows and doors, and potassium iodide tablets, which protect your thyroid gland from radioactive iodine exposure. If a nuclear blast occurs, the first warning you may receive is a sudden, bright flash of light, brighter than the sun, which can cause severe eye damage or blindness if you look directly at it. The instant you see this flash, look away immediately and drop to the ground face down, covering your head and neck with your arms. If indoors, get as low as possible, preferably under sturdy furniture or against an inner wall away from windows. If outside, find solid cover behind a building, car, or in a low ditch and lie flat, shielding your head. Seconds after the flash, the blast wave arrives with enough force to demolish buildings and hurl debris at lethal speeds. Staying low and shielded is your best chance to survive the blast. After the blast, radioactive fallout is the deadliest threat. Seek shelter immediately indoors, preferably underground or in the innermost part of a large building to dramatically reduce exposure to radiation. Seal windows, doors, and ventilation with plastic sheeting and duct tape to prevent fallout dust from entering. Stay inside your shelter for at least 24 to 48 hours, the period when radiation levels are highest and most dangerous. Avoid consuming food or water from outside sources until declared safe. If you were outside during or after the blast, radioactive particles might be on your skin, hair, and clothes. Remove your outer clothing carefully and place it in a sealed plastic bag away from others, removing up to 90% of radioactive contamination. Then take a thorough shower with soap and lukewarm water, washing hair and skin gently but thoroughly. Avoid conditioners or lotions that can trap radioactive particles. This process greatly reduces radiation exposure and risk of sickness. Surviving the initial blast and fallout is only the beginning. Long-term survival depends on access to uncontaminated food and water, safe shelter, and medical care. Only consume food and water from sealed containers or sources verified safe by authorities. Fallout radiation decays over time, but can linger for months or years. Follow official guidance carefully about when it is safe to resume normal activities. Nuclear weapons wield unparalleled destructive power, but your best defense is preparation and knowledge. Swift, informed action before, during, and after a blast can save lives. Though the threat is unimaginable, the right preparation can turn the odds in your favor. It starts with a blinding flash. No sound, no time to run, just light, hotter than the sun. In a heartbeat, a city disappears. Concrete turns to vapor. shadows burn into the ground. That's the power of one modern nuclear warhead. Now, imagine 12,000. 9 nations hold them, hidden in silos, submarines, and bombers. Each one built to erase entire civilizations. They're not weapons, they're extinction machines. Let's open their arsenal.
I built a Wix website overnight, and it helped launch my career as a sketch artist. There's beauty in everything, and being there firsthand is, of course, the best way to experience it. As a reportage illustrator, my art unfolds in real time. So my website needs to showcase the kinetic energy behind this craft. I draw fast, and my site keeps up.
Korea's first solid fuel ICBM, faster to launch, easier to hide, and designed to survive a first strike. Solid propellant changes the whole calculus. Unlike older liquid-fueled missiles that need hours of fueling and support vehicles, a solid-fuel Hwasong-18 can sit ready, move on roads, and be concealed among civilian traffic, shortening warning time and complicating any attempt to preempt it. Flight tests in 2023 validated long-range, lofted trajectories and showed the potential to reach the continental United States. Now, imagine a hypothetical Hwasong-18 warhead. For illustration, we'll use about 300 kilotons, detonating over Chicago. The scene is sudden and merciless. The initial fireball would gouge out a roughly 1 to 1.2 kilometer diameter crater at ground zero, vaporizing everything inside. A devastating blast overpressure that collapses most reinforced buildings would radiate to about 3.8 to 4 kilometers, turning dense neighborhoods and parts of the central business district into rubble. The thermal pulse, searing heat able to cause fatal third-degree burns and spark widespread fires, could extend to roughly 6 to 7 kilometers, setting whole blocks alight. Deep beneath the ocean's skin, inside the quiet hulls of France's Triomphant-class submarines, sleeps a missile designed to make nations think twice. Meet the M51.3, the latest evolution of France's sea-launched ballistic missile, now declared operational and built to keep Paris's oceanic nuclear deterrent relevant for decades. The M51.3 brings improved range, accuracy, and penetration aids, and is reported to carry the latest French oceanic warhead, the TNO family, in its upgraded form. Now, imagine a single M51.3 warhead. For this scenario, we'll use a representative approximate 100 kiloton TNO class yield, detonating over Moscow. The fireball would rip open a roughly 0.7 to 0.8 kilometer diameter zone, vaporizing everything at ground zero. A devastating blast overpressure sufficient to collapse most masonry and concrete structures would radiate out to roughly 3 to 3.5 kilometers, turning neighborhoods into flattened rubble. The thermal pulse, capable of causing third-degree burns and igniting widespread conflagrations, could reach about 5 kilometers, starting fires that would race through an urban tinderbox. Moderate blast damage and shattered windows, enough to collapse fragile interiors and create lethal flying debris, would extend into the 8 to 12 kilometer band, threatening millions across a sprawling metropolitan area. Radioactive fallout carried by weather could contaminate lands tens to hundreds of kilometers downwind, crippling emergency response and creating long-term exclusion zones. A convoy rumbles down a remote highway, a canistered colossus riding on its back. This is the DF-41 or Dongfeng 41, China's newest road-mobile intercontinental ballistic missile, built for range, survivability, and to punch holes through defenses with multiple warheads. Open source analysts place its reach at roughly 12,000 to 15,000 kilometers, and it's widely believed to be a solid fuel, 3-stage design, capable of carrying multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles. Mobility plus ambiguity is the strategic point. You can't be sure where they are until it's too late. Now imagine one DF-41 warhead. For illustration, we'll use about 300 kilotons, arriving over Los Angeles. The scene is brutal and quick. The initial fireball would gouge out a roughly 1 to 1.2 diameter crater at ground zero, vaporizing everything inside. A devastating blast overpressure that collapses most reinforced buildings would radiate out to about 3.8 to 4 kilometers, instantly turning downtown towers and dense neighborhoods into rubble. The thermal pulse, the searing heat that causes lethal third-degree burns and ignites widespread fires, could reach roughly 6 to 7 kilometers, torching wooden suburbs and setting whole districts ablaze. Moderate blast effects like shattered glass or structural damage would push well beyond into the 10-plus kilometer band, endangering millions across the metropolitan area and suburbs. Buried deep beneath the American Midwest, in silent underground silos, lies a weapon that could end civilization in 30 minutes. And it's been standing guard for over half a century. This is the LGM-30G Minuteman III, the backbone of America's nuclear deterrent. It's old, yes, first deployed in 1970, but don't mistake age for weakness. Each carries a 475 kiloton thermonuclear warhead, over 30 times more powerful than Hiroshima's bomb, and can strike targets over 13,000 kilometers away, reaching them in under an hour. Now, imagine one detonating over Moscow. The fireball alone would stretch nearly 1.2 kilometers wide, vaporizing everything within it. The blast wave, moving faster than sound, would flatten most structures within a 4 to 5 kilometer radius. Beyond that, intense thermal radiation would ignite fires and cause third-degree burns up to 8 kilometers away. Within seconds, more than 1 million people could perish. Within hours, the city's infrastructure would collapse. Fallout would drift hundreds of kilometers, poisoning everything it touched. Hidden in the cold, dark depths of the ocean, aboard America's Ohio-class submarines, lurks a weapon so powerful it can erase entire nations without ever being seen. This is the UGM-133A Trident II D5, the most advanced submarine-launched ballistic missile on Earth. Each of the 14 active Ohio-class submarines carries up to 20 Trident II missiles, and each missile can be armed with up to 8 W-88 or W-76 thermonuclear warheads, giving the U.S. Navy a total of nearly 280 deployed Trident IIs. Each warhead can unleash between 100 and 475 kilotons of destructive power and strike targets more than 12,000 kilometers away with pinpoint precision, accurate to within 90 meters. Now, picture one W-88 warhead detonating over St. Petersburg. The fireball would span 1.2 kilometers, vaporizing everything within. The blast wave would flatten concrete structures within 5 kilometers, and the thermal pulse would ignite fires and cause third-degree burns up to 8 kilometers away. Within moments, over 1 million lives could be lost. The shockwave would roll across the Gulf of Finland. The radioactive fallout would blanket the surrounding region. A convoy melts into the morning fog, a canistered arrow on a heavy truck that could be anywhere or nowhere when the moment comes. This is the RS-24 Yars, Russia's road-mobile and silo-based MIRV ICBM, built to survive, disperse, and put multiple warheads onto distant targets. Technically, the Yars is straightforward but dangerous, a solid-fuel 3-stage missile deployable from both road vehicles and hardened silos, with published ranges around 10,500 to 12,000 kilometers, and MIRV capability. Public reporting cites 3 to 4 warheads commonly, with some sources noting 3 to 6 as possibilities. Exact loadouts, yields, and operational doctrine are state secrets, which is precisely the point. Now, imagine one of those warheads arriving over New York City. For illustration, we'll use a representative approximate 300 kiloton warhead. The scene is immediate and apocalyptic. The fireball would gouge a 1 to 1.2 kilometer diameter crater at ground zero, vaporizing everything in its center, parts of Manhattan's core erased in an instant. A devastating blast overpressure that collapses reinforced buildings would radiate out to roughly 3.8 to 4 kilometers, flattening large swaths of Manhattan, parts of Brooklyn and Jersey City across the river, and crushing critical infrastructure. The thermal pulse, the searing heat that causes fatal third-degree burns and ignites widespread fires, could reach roughly 6 to 7 kilometers, torching neighborhoods, fueling conflagrations across dense urban blocks, and overwhelming any firefighting response. Moderate blast damage and shattered glass would push well into the 10-plus kilometer band, sending lethal debris across boroughs, knocking out bridges and tunnels, and crippling transit and port facilities. RS-28 Sarmat, Russia's super-heavy liquid-fueled ICBM, designed to carry massive payloads, MIRVs, and even hypersonic glide vehicles, is meant to be the capstone of Moscow's land-based deterrent. Public reporting about Sarmat's payload is blunt. Russia says the missile can carry up to 10 tons of payload and has been described in state sources as able to field up to 10 large 750 kiloton warheads, or many smaller warheads or glide vehicles, a flexibility that creates a terrifying upper bound for destructive power. Imagine one 750 kiloton Sarmat warhead arriving over Washington, D.C. Total vaporization at ground zero, about 1.2 to 1.5 kilometers in diameter. Everything at point-blank range is vaporized. Severe blast, most reinforced buildings collapse, about 4 to 5 kilometer radius. Downtown districts and hardened structures in the core would be catastrophically damaged. Thermal pulse, lethal third-degree burns or mass ignition, about 7 to 9 kilometer radius. Intense heat would ignite fires across broad swaths of the city and torch wooden suburbs. Moderate blast and fragmentation, or shattered glass, structural damage, and lethal debris, about 12 to 18 kilometer radius. Suburbs, transit corridors, and critical infrastructure would suffer widespread.
Crunch tacos! Crunch!
6 tacos for $6. Crunch your time.
A weapon that would rewrite the meaning of invulnerable. Today, that whisper has a name: Poseidon 2M39, an autonomous nuclear-powered underwater drone Russia presents as able to travel thousands of kilometers and smash coastlines with a nuclear warhead. What makes Poseidon truly chilling isn't only disputed yield claims. Analysts argue from a few megatons to larger figures. It's the way an underwater nuclear detonation changes the battlefield. Imagine a single Poseidon detonating using a 50 megaton yield aimed at San Francisco. Total vaporization at ground zero, about a 5.8 kilometer radius. Everything at point-blank range instantly gone, about 11.7 kilometer diameter. Severe blast, most reinforced buildings collapse, about 20.5 to 21.9 kilometer radius. Catastrophic structural failure across huge parts of the urban region. Thermal pulse, or third-degree burns and widespread ignition, is about 35.1 kilometer radius. Moderate blast damage, shattered glass, structural damage, and lethal debris, about a 55.6 kilometer radius. Radioactive contamination, base surge, and local water shock could render coastal zones unusable and pollute sea and shorelines for hundreds of kilometers downwind or downcurrent, depending on weather and currents. The oft-repeated tsunami narratives depend heavily on bathymetry and remain contested among experts. The world's most powerful weapons are armed and waiting. But what happens when someone finally presses the button? Missile defense sounds comforting. Radars watching the sky. Interceptors waiting on launch rails. A technological barrier between your city and the most destructive weapons ever built. It feels like safety. But missile defense was never designed to save a city. Not New York, not London, not Tokyo, not yours. Most people imagine missile defense as a dome, an invisible shield that blocks anything coming from above. a system that stops nuclear war before it reaches the ground. That image comes from movies. Reality looks very different. Missile defense is not a shield, it's a filter. It was never meant to stop everything. It was never meant to be perfect. And it was never meant to protect cities. Its real purpose is colder. Missile defense exists to protect the ability to retaliate, not the population. Start with the strongest defensive system ever deployed, the ground-based Mid-Course Defense System. It uses ground-based interceptors designed to hit intercontinental ballistic missiles in space. Each interceptor costs between $70 and $100 million. Each interceptor can engage one target. The United States currently has 44 deployed interceptors with a total inventory of fewer than 70. That means fewer than 70 chances to stop an attack involving hundreds of incoming warheads. That's not a shield. That's a thin insurance layer designed for limited attacks, not real nuclear war. Now, compare that to land-based offensive weapons. The Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile has a range of over 13,000 kilometers and carries a nuclear warhead with a yield of up to 475 kilotons. There are around 400 Minuteman III missiles kept on constant alert in underground silos. Each missile can be launched within minutes. That means hundreds of nuclear warheads can be airborne before missile defense fires its first interceptor. Now add submarines. One Ohio-class ballistic missile submarine carries 20 Trident II D5 missiles. Each Trident II missile can carry up to 8 independently targetable nuclear warheads. Each warhead has a yield between 100 and 475 kilotons. One submarine can deliver up to 160 nuclear warheads. The United States operates 14 Ohio-class submarines. At least 4 to 5 of them are on patrol at any given time, undetectable, silent, and ready in launch position. That means hundreds of warheads that missile defense cannot see, track, or stop before launch. Now, look at Russia's land-based forces. The RS-28 Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missile has a range of over 18,000 kilometers. It is designed to carry 10 to 15 nuclear warheads, plus multiple decoys and penetration aids. Russia plans to deploy at least 40 to 50 Sarmat missiles. That means hundreds of warheads from one missile type alone. Each warhead appears as a separate target. Missile defense gets one interceptor per object. Now, add Russia's submarine force. Each Bore-class submarine carries 16 Bulava missiles. Each Bulava missile can carry up to 6 nuclear warheads. Russia operates at least 10 Bore-class submarines, with several on patrol at all times. That adds hundreds more warheads approaching from unpredictable directions. Now,
build client credibility with Gmail. Look professional with a custom business domain and craft replies faster with Gemini while helping keep your inbox secure. Elevate your brand with Google Workspace.
10 THAAD batteries worldwide. They defend specific military regions, not entire cities, and not entire countries. Patriot missile defense systems are even more limited. They're designed for aircraft and short-range missiles. They were never built to stop intercontinental nuclear warheads. They exist in the hundreds, but they are irrelevant against strategic nuclear strikes. Aegis missile defense systems use SM-3 interceptors. Each SM-3 interceptor costs between $10 and $25 million. They're effective mainly over oceans against limited ballistic threats. Even globally, there are only a few hundred SM-3 interceptors available. That number is insignificant compared to the thousands of nuclear warheads in existence. Now, the math becomes fatal. Defense launches one interceptor per target. Offense launches missiles, warheads, decoys, debris, and electronic countermeasures. Defense must be perfect. Offense needs one warhead to get through. Speed makes this imbalance worse. Ballistic warheads travel at over 20,000 kilometers per hour. From detection to impact, minutes, sometimes less. There is no evacuation, no citywide sheltering, no second chance. Missile defense does not get retries. By the time confirmation arrives, the outcome is already locked in by physics. Then come decoys, the system killers. Modern nuclear missiles deploy lightweight decoys designed to look identical to real warheads. Radar cannot tell the difference. Infrared sensors cannot tell the difference. Missile defense must guess. The attacker already knows. Defense works with probability. Offense works with certainty. No software upgrade fixes that. Even when missile defense works, the city's not safe. If interception happens too low or too late, radioactive debris still spreads. Electromagnetic pulse effects can still disable power grids across hundreds of kilometers. Communications fail. Hospitals lose power. Water systems stop. An interception over a city can still cripple it. Missile defense can change how destruction happens. It cannot guarantee that destruction doesn't happen. Now consider priorities. Missile defense coverage is limited by cost and physics. You cannot defend everything. So planners defend what matters strategically. Missile silos, air bases, submarine ports, command bunkers. Cities do not decide the outcome of nuclear war. From a strategic standpoint, defending them is inefficient. That decision was made during the Cold War. It still defines defense planning today. Cities are not forgotten, they're accepted losses. Cities are not defended, they're calculated. Now, imagine the aftermath. One 300-kiloton nuclear warhead detonates over a major city. The explosion lasts seconds. The consequences last decades. Power grids collapse instantly, not for hours, but for months. Water treatment fails. Fuel distribution stops. Food supply chains collapse within days. Hospitals are destroyed or overwhelmed. Radiation zones block rescue. Survivors are isolated. Within days, secondary effects kill more people than the blast itself. Firestorms burn uncontrolled. Disease spreads. Social order fractures. Missile defense does not prevent this. At best, it slightly changes where destruction falls. And the most dangerous effect isn't physical, it's psychological. Once one nuclear weapon gets through, every assumption collapses. Escalation becomes automatic. Retaliation becomes mandatory. Restraint disappears. The first city is not the end, it's the trigger. At 3:27 a.m., a radar operator at Thule Air Force Base in Greenland watches red blips appear along the Arctic corridor, the classic route for Russian intercontinental ballistic missiles. Within seconds, the dots multiply: 5, 20, 50. Those dots are not blips, but boosters climbing through the cold sky. The operator radios.
Command, this isn't a drill. We have confirmed launches.
Russia's modern road-mobile RS-24 Yars and its aging but heavy R-30M family, the SS-18 Satan lineage, are designed to get multiple warheads airborne fast. The RS-24 is a solid-fuel, MIRV-capable ICBM deployed in both silo and mobile launchers. Its practical range covers intercontinental targets, and a single missile can carry several independently targetable re-entry vehicles, a way to put multiple high-yield strikes in the air from one launcher. The R-36M variants were built for brute force, very large throw weights, and warheads that, in some configurations, are measured in the megatons, making them devastating counter-value and counter-force weapons. At sea, Russia's Bore-class ballistic missile submarines can release RM-56 Bulava SLBMs. Bulava is designed to carry multiple warheads with penetration aids and is meant to be a concealed, survivable leg of the triad. Launches from submarines shorten warning times because they can be fired from relative proximity to coasts. On the American and NATO side,
The LGM-30 Minuteman III ICBM force and the sea-based UGM-133 Trident II D5 form the analogous response options. Minuteman flight times to Eurasian targets are typically in the 25 to 35-minute band. Trident D5 flight times depend on launch position, but can be under 15 to 30 minutes for closer arcs. At roughly 8:03 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time, the first large detonations occur. These are the prompt high-yield strikes intended to decapitate command, destroy military nodes, and vaporize population centers. An 800-kiloton atmosphere burst over a capital produces a white flash visible hundreds of kilometers away. A blast that vaporizes structures at ground zero and ignites firestorms for miles beyond. Detonations at this stage target both counterforce and countervalue locations. Russia's heavy R-36M variants, or the RS-24 MIRV packages, can be loaded for multiple hard targets. U.S. counterforce options would include precisely targeted Trident D5 warheads or Minuteman III re-entry vehicles. Strategic bombers like the B-2 and B-52 carrying modern B-61 family weapons, the B-61-12 being a guided variable yield design, add flexibility in delivery and yield selection, though airborne bombers can only meaningfully contribute if they are already aloft or near the target. At the 20-minute mark, American Strategic Command, after confirming multiple detonations, orders retaliation. U.S. Trident II D5 missiles fired from Ohio-class submarines can place accurate MIRV or single-warhead re-entry vehicles on Moscow or strategic military targets with flight times that, depending on launch points, can be under 30 minutes. The land leg, Minuteman III, is measured for quick response, and the airborne leg, B-2s and B-52s, offer variable yield options via B-61 family bombs. That combination gives the U.S. multiple delivery modes, but it also guarantees a massive count of warheads aloft in minutes. On the Russian side, hypersonic boost glide vehicles, such as Avangard, reported to maneuver at extremely high speeds during re-entry, reduce interception windows, and complicate tracking. Their presence compresses decision times and increases the temptation for launch-on-warning postures. Modern interceptors can engage some fraction of warheads or their decoys, but MIRVs and penetration aids are intentionally designed to overwhelm defenses. The result? The retaliation wave is almost certain to land in dozens or hundreds of places within the next 10 minutes. By the half-hour mark, the character of the crisis changes from targeting to systemic collapse. Hundreds of detonations have already occurred. EMP from high-altitude bursts and the sheer density of explosions create a cascade of cascading failures. Power grids trip under surges and failures. Satellites are degraded by debris and radiation. GPS accuracy collapses in many regions, and civil telecommunications fail. The skies streak with re-entry vehicles. The upper air glows red with intense thermal radiation and fireballs. All of this produces immense amounts of black carbon and dust that begin their ascent toward the stratosphere. As detonations accumulate and fires rage, enormous quantities of soot and vaporized material are lofted into the stratosphere. The dynamics are physical and direct. Firestorms generated by urban conflagrations inject black carbon thousands of meters high. Once in the stratosphere, that soot is not readily washed out by rain and instead spreads globally, reducing incoming solar radiation. At the same time, fallout from surface and low-altitude detonations sends radioactive isotopes like cesium-137, strontium-90, and plutonium particulates across continents. These isotopes have long half-lives that contaminate land and water and create long-term health hazards. Ocean launches and detonations pollute marine systems as radioactive material washes into currents and bioaccumulates in food chains. The combined climate and radiological effects ensure that even areas not directly hit by a warhead face collapse of food production, water safety, and public health infrastructure within weeks to months. An hour after the first launch, weapon counts and flight times explain the grim totals. Hundreds to thousands of re-entry vehicles have detonated across the Northern Hemisphere and beyond. Land, sea, and air infrastructure lie in ruins. Satellites essential to modern logistics are damaged or destroyed, and electromagnetic disruption has taken down banking, transport, and emergency communications. Many delivery modes, many warheads, multiple launch arcs, short flight times, and penetration aids
all conspire to make the first hour irreversible. Beyond this point, global casualty counts are in the hundreds of millions. Infrastructure is largely destroyed, and the first physical steps of nuclear winter are underway. The planet's climate system and biosphere have already been pushed onto a path that will cause famine, disease, and ecosystem collapse. The technical architecture that kept superfighting states in mutually assured destruction has now executed its grim logic. Months later, the environmental, radiological, and systemic damage begun in that first hour will have cascaded into planetary-scale disruptions. Sunlight will remain reduced where soot is thickest. Harvests will fail. Potable water will be scarce. And biological systems, from insects to crops to fish populations, will be devastated. That was only the opening act. What happens next could change the fate of billions. One moment, the world is scrolling through short videos and social media. The next, the sky glows white. That's how a global war could begin. Not with a declaration, not with negotiations breaking down, but with a sudden chain reaction that no one can stop. Before anyone truly understands what happened, tens of millions of lives could already be at risk. But who would start it? What weapons would be unleashed? And what would the first hour, first week, and first year actually look like? It begins at 3:17 UTC. Satellites detect 3 missile launches from different regions of the planet. One from Kaliningrad, one from the Barents Sea, and one from central Iran. NORAD thinks it's a glitch, until radar confirms the truth. The first missile is a Russian Iskander-M ballistic missile, capable of carrying a low-yield nuclear payload with a flight time so short it can strike before anyone can respond. The second is a Caliber-M cruise missile, stealthy, low-flying, nearly invisible to radar. The third is a Fateh 110 missile launched toward a U.S. base in the Middle East. Suddenly, the world's most advanced warning systems erupt with red alerts while millions sleep, unaware that the nightmare of global war has already begun. There are 3 highly realistic ignition points for a modern global conflict, each based on real-world military movements already observed. The first is a Russia versus NATO confrontation. If Moscow faced internal instability or catastrophic battle losses, it might conduct a so-called limited strike on a NATO supply hub, using a 5 to 10 kiloton tactical nuclear weapon. This strike would be intended to shock NATO into backing down. Instead, it would likely trigger Article 5 and unleash a cycle of retaliation impossible to stop. The second spark lies in an escalating US-China confrontation. A sudden invasion of Taiwan would unleash DF-17 hypersonic gliders moving at Mach 10, DF-26 ballistic Guam killer missiles, Type O-55 destroyers, and J-20 stealth fighters. The United States would respond with carrier strike groups, Tomahawks, stealth aircraft, and cyber countermeasures. Russia could quietly back China. NATO would back the US. The conflict could expand from the Taiwan Strait to the South China Sea, then to Europe, and finally across the world. The third trigger is a Middle Eastern chain reaction. Israel might strike Iranian nuclear facilities. Iran could retaliate with Shahab-3 ballistic missiles and waves of drones against US bases in the Gulf. The US would intervene in Israel's defense. Russia might provide diplomatic or air defense support to Iran. China might align with Russia to preserve strategic partnerships. 3 separate wars would merge into one global conflict. Within the first hour of the war, thousands of military systems across the world activate. Russia puts its perimeter semi-automatic retaliatory system on high alert. Over 600 long-range missiles streak across the sky in the first 60 minutes. Then, the first nuclear detonation occurs. A blinding flash erupts over the Baltic Sea. Sensors confirm a tactical nuclear explosion in the 5 to 10 kiloton range. No one knows if it was a deliberate strike, a malfunction, or an intercepted warhead. NATO has 3 minutes to decide whether to retaliate. The world freezes, and this is only the beginning. By the second hour, more mushroom clouds appear. Some are tactical low-yield detonations. Others are far larger. New York, Moscow, Beijing, London, and Paris could be hit with strategic warheads measuring hundreds of kilotons each, vaporizing city centers in seconds. Firestorms rip outward, igniting suburbs and forests. Fallout clouds travel with the wind, poisoning areas untouched by direct strikes. Global communications falter as EMP waves ripple through satellites and digital infrastructure. Civilians attempt to flee, but highways jam instantly. Airports fail as radars go offline. Emergency alerts never arrive or arrive too late. Panic becomes the most powerful force on Earth. By midnight of the first day, government control is collapsing. Millions are dead. Millions more hide in basements, subway tunnels, or improvised shelters. Surviving the first day means nothing. The first week is far deadlier. As the first week unfolds, cities untouched by initial blasts crumble into chaos. Supply chains break. Hospitals overflow with radiation victims. Roads clog with abandoned vehicles. Nuclear fallout spreads across continents, carried by wind and rain. Agriculture collapses as sunlight dims under massive cloud cover. The first hints of nuclear winter begin. By the end of the week, tens of millions have died. Societies unravel. Survival becomes local. Fear becomes universal. The first month marks the point where strategic nuclear exchange becomes unavoidable. A satellite malfunction might be mistaken for an ICBM. A radar shadow might be seen as a launch. The United States could launch dozens of Minuteman III ICBMs, each with 300 to 475 kiloton warheads. Ohio-class submarines could unleash waves of Trident II D5 SLBMs, each with up to 8 475 kiloton warheads. Russia could respond with RS-24 Yars missiles or Sarmat heavy missiles carrying 10 to 15 warheads of 750 kilotons each. Within 45 minutes, over 1,200 nuclear warheads could detonate across the planet, killing hundreds of millions instantly. As months pass, smoke and soot from burning megacities rise into the upper atmosphere. Sunlight declines sharply. Temperatures drop by 2 to 5 degrees Celsius. Global crops fail. Oceans acidify. Famine spreads. Billions face starvation. Civilization collapses. Major cities become abandoned ruins. Governments survive only in hardened bunkers. Borders dissolve. The world map becomes meaningless. Areas with water, moderate radiation, and arable land remain habitable, but barely. North America survives in scattered pockets. Europe is largely devastated. Large parts of Russia remain irradiated, but partially intact. China preserves some state control. The Middle East collapses under combined fallout and infrastructure loss. Africa and South America, less directly targeted, suffer famine and mass migration. By the end of the first year, humanity is reduced to a fraction of its former population. Radiation, starvation, disease, and social collapse kill more people than the weapons themselves. Civilization has fallen. Survival becomes the only goal. Despite the unprecedented scale of the conflict, nuclear war does not destroy the planet evenly. Strategic logic governs targeting decisions. Nations focus on disabling an adversary's ability to command, produce, communicate, and retaliate, not on annihilating every population center. As a result, large areas of the world remain physically intact. Entire continents avoid direct nuclear impact, even as global systems collapse around them. Infrastructure may survive, but connectivity does not. Electricity grids fail. Fuel supplies run dry. Trade disappears. This uneven destruction creates a sharp divide between regions that lose everything and regions that lose coordination but retain physical viability. This division becomes the foundation of the post-war world and determines where civilization can continue in any recognizable form. Regions that once dominated global politics, finance, and military power suffer the most severe consequences. Large parts of North America, Europe, Russia, East Asia, and South Asia become dead zones defined by radiation exposure, infrastructure collapse, and long-term uninhabitability. In these areas, survival beyond the first year is rare. Water treatment systems fail almost immediately. Hospitals are destroyed, abandoned, or overwhelmed. Food distribution collapses entirely. Fallout contaminates soils and rivers, making agriculture impossible for decades. Even regions spared direct nuclear strikes are overwhelmed by refugees, disease, and social breakdown. These zones do not recover within human timescales. They remain fractured landscapes of ruin, radiation, and isolated enclaves. In contrast, several parts of the world retain partial or full functionality. Australia and New Zealand emerge as some of the most stable post-war regions. Geographic isolation protects them from direct strikes, while strong agricultural capacity allows food self-sufficiency. Over time, these nations become heavily fortified, preserving stability through controlled isolation. South America, particularly Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and Uruguay, retains fertile land, fresh water, and relatively low radiation exposure. As global trade disappears, these countries shift toward regional food networks and controlled exports. Agriculture becomes the primary source of power, replacing industry and finance. Iceland and Greenland retain functionality due to geothermal energy, low population density, and isolation. Their harsh climates limit population growth, but energy independence and minimal fallout allow long-term survival. The most devastating phase begins months after the war. Smoke and soot from burning cities rise into the stratosphere, where rain cannot wash them away. Sunlight is blocked on a global scale. Average temperatures drop sharply, shortening growing seasons or eliminating them entirely in many regions. Marine ecosystems suffer from reduced photosynthesis, collapsing fisheries and coastal food systems. Mass migration follows. Hundreds of millions move toward equatorial and southern regions in search of warmth and arable land. Borders harden. Conflicts over food and water replace ideological wars as the dominant source of violence. The post-war world is no longer interconnected. Globalization collapses permanently. Supply chains do not recover. Complex manufacturing becomes impossible without international coordination. Advanced technology survives only in isolated pockets, not as a global system. In many regions, technology regresses, not due to a lack of knowledge, but due to the absence of materials, energy, and specialized labor. Civilization reorganizes into regional systems based on proximity, self-sufficiency, and resilience. Long-distance trade exists only where maritime routes remain viable and secure, and even then, it is limited and heavily protected. Beyond climate cooling, nuclear winter triggers long-term environmental instability. Acid rain alters soil chemistry, reducing agricultural productivity for decades. Wildfires permanently reshape ecosystems, pushing many species into extinction. Ice melt and ocean current disruption further destabilize global climate patterns. Radiation zones become accidental wildlife preserves. In the absence of humans, animals adapt rapidly, reclaiming urban spaces, industrial zones, and former agricultural land. Nature does not recover to its previous state. It evolves into something new.
The world does not die in a single moment. It fractures region by region into something unfamiliar. But fragmentation is not the final chapter. Now we explore what rises from that broken landscape. Not one future, but many. 6 distinct paths of survival. Because after civilization falls, humanity does not simply endure, it transforms. They call it safety, but it's really a trade, air for freedom. When the bombs fall, the lucky reach government bunkers, private shelters, and abandoned military complexes. Artificial lighting replaces the sun. Hydroponics replace soil. Machines recycle water in closed loops.
At first, it feels like order survived. Schedules, duties, rules, rations. A routine is a powerful drug. But then the months stack into years. No sunlight breaks sleep cycles. People become exhausted, irritable, paranoid. In a bunker, small conflicts don't fade, they ferment. Children grow up never seeing the sky. A whole generation learns that Earth is a story adults tell to keep them calm, and everything depends on maintenance. One filter failure, one contaminated intake, one broken seal. Thousands die in a place designed to keep them alive. The bunker age can last a long time, but its enemy isn't radiation, it's time. And eventually the question becomes unavoidable. When do you open the hatch? And what's waiting outside? Outside, survivors gather around one thing: clean water. A town with a well becomes a state. A state becomes a fortress. Former soldiers, engineers, farmers, and charismatic leaders form councils or dictatorships. Walls rise. Checkpoints appear. Curfews become law. Daily life becomes a split screen, half farming, half defense. Water is filtered through charcoal, sand, improvised chemicals. Medical supplies vanish fast. A simple infection becomes a death sentence. Then comes the hardest decision. Outsiders. Do you let them in and risk disease, violence, sabotage? Or turn them away and create enemies who now know where you live? These micronations clash over land, seed stock, livestock, fuel. Alliances form, break, reform. Like old geopolitics, but uglier. In the hardest hit regions, nothing stays standing long enough to rebuild. Fallout blankets cities. Rivers go toxic. Infrastructure rots. Governments vanish in days. Gangs and militias move through ruins like weather. Vehicles become...
Find a great rental car deal with Kayak. And find the confidence to do important...
The land in a new language. Hot zones, dead rivers, black fields. Places you enter only once. Food becomes the central religion. Canned goods, small game, anything that moves. Anything that doesn't kill you first. Children grow up without school, without stability, without a future. Some regions fall under warlords, rot, others splinter into tribes. Life becomes violent, short, unpredictable. A tiny fraction of humanity survives above the planet. Astronauts, space agency staff, scientists, billionaires. Orbital stations, lunar bases, Mars outposts. Here, life is controlled perfection. Air regenerated, water recycled, food grown under LEDs. But stability in space is fragile because nothing is forgiving. A micrometeoroid strike, a radiation storm, and the habitat becomes a coffin. Psychologically, it's worse. Earth is below you, a dead sphere. Your home is gone. And you're alive in a metal box because a system keeps working. These colonies represent peak technology, but their timeline is brutal. They must expand, terraform, build self-repairing habitats, or die slowly. And the question that haunts them isn't, can we survive? It's this: do we ever return? Or are we becoming something else? Some survivors adopt the oldest strategy of all: never stay long enough to be found or poisoned. They move to avoid shifting fallout, depleted resources, and conflict. Hunter-gatherers with scavenge technology. Rifles passed down like heirlooms. Solar chargers powering radios. Carts, bikes, improvised vehicles. Nomads become experts in one thing: reading the land. Weather patterns, radiation zones, water signs, edible plants, herbal medicine. The question here is fundamental. Can a civilization exist without roots? Or will movement keep them alive, but keep them primitive forever? The ocean becomes a shield, Survivors gather on cargo ships, oil platforms, container-built floating cities. Fishing, desalination, algae cultivation, the new pillars of life. At sea, fallout is weaker, but danger is constant. Storms, rogue waves, mechanical decay. Without maintenance, engines fail. Desalination units degrade. Metal corrodes. Navigation becomes deadly if satellites and GPS networks are gone, and piracy returns, not as a crime but as survival. Yet with coordination, these societies can stabilize. Solar arrays, wind turbines, floating greenhouses, aquaponics. And then the most haunting dilemma arrives. Land. Is Earth safe enough to return? Or does the ocean become home forever, and humanity evolves into a maritime species? So those are the 6 paths. Some hopeful, some horrifying, and one that changes the definition of human. But they all share one truth. Nuclear war doesn't end the story, it rewrites the species. And every future you just saw exists because of one moment at the beginning. A decision, a mistake, a false alarm, a chain reaction nobody could stop. It doesn't start with an explosion. It starts with a whisper. A secure line lights up, a coded phrase, a tone no one ever wants to hear. Somewhere deep inside the Pentagon, inside NORAD, early warning systems have just detected something impossible to ignore. Multiple high-velocity objects rising from hostile territory. They're not aircraft. They're not satellites. They're nuclear missiles. And in that moment, the most protected human being on Earth becomes the most hunted. The instant confirmation hits, the President of the United States is no longer treated as an individual. He becomes a strategic asset. Within seconds, the United States Secret Service initiates continuity protocols, plans designed for one purpose: keep the president alive long enough to maintain command of the United States. Because if the president dies, the chain of command fractures, and that could be more dangerous than the missiles themselves. A military aide rushes forward carrying a black briefcase. You've seen it before, but now it's real. The nuclear football. Inside is not a button. It's far more complex and far more terrifying. Encrypted communication tools, strike options, authentication codes, and a small card carried separately by the president, the biscuit. Without it, nothing launches. Without it, retaliation dies. And without retaliation, deterrence collapses. Let's stop for a second. What exactly is headed toward the United States? Because this determines everything. Intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs, like the RS-28 Sarmat, can travel over 18,000 kilometers per hour, carrying multiple nuclear warheads, each capable of destroying a city. Submarine-launched ballistic missiles, like the Trident II D5 used by the US, but mirrored by adversaries, can strike with almost no warning from oceans, just off the coast. And then there are hypersonic weapons like the Avangard, capable of maneuvering unpredictably at extreme speeds, making interception nearly impossible. Time to impact? 15 to 30 minutes. Sometimes less. Now imagine trying to survive that. Here's the twist. The survival plan depends entirely on location, because the president is constantly moving. The White House, Air Force One, a public event, a foreign country. Each scenario triggers a completely different survival protocol. Let's break the most dangerous one. This is where things get serious, because despite its iconic image, the White House is not designed to withstand a direct nuclear strike. So what happens? The Secret Service doesn't wait. They move instantly. The president is rushed underground into the Presidential Emergency Operations Center, or PEOC, a hardened bunker beneath the White House. But here's the problem. It's not enough. The PEOC is designed for short-term survival, not for a full-scale nuclear war. So the real goal isn't to stay, it's to escape. At this point, every second matters. Why? Because once missiles are confirmed, the United States must decide whether to respond before impact. This is called launch on warning, and yes, it's exactly what it sounds like. The president may have less than 10 minutes to decide whether to unleash the most destructive weapons in human history. Weapons like the Minuteman III, sitting in underground silos across America, or submarine-based arsenals hidden beneath the oceans. But here's the terrifying part. Once launched, they cannot be recalled. Picture this, a screen showing incoming trajectories, and a simple question. Mr. President, do you confirm retaliation? No second chances. No undo button. Just a decision that could end civilization. Whether a launch is ordered or not, one thing is certain. The president must disappear. Fast. Helicopters are already spinning up on the South Lawn. Marine One lifts off within minutes, escorted by decoys and armed aircraft. Destination? Classified, but likely one of two options: a hardened underground facility or something far more mobile. If time allows, the president is transferred to a Boeing E-4B. This is not a normal aircraft, it's a doomsday plane, designed to survive electromagnetic pulses, nuclear shock waves, and the collapse of ground infrastructure. Inside, it becomes a flying command center, capable of controlling U.S. nuclear forces even if the ground is destroyed. Think about that. Even if cities vanish, command still exists. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. If the attack is too fast or too close, escape may not be possible. So what then? The president relies on layered defenses. Missile defense systems like ground-based mid-course defense attempt to intercept incoming warheads, but their success rate is limited. They're not designed to stop a massive nuclear strike. They're designed to reduce damage, not prevent it. Even if the president survives the blast, there's another threat: an electromagnetic pulse, or EMP. High-altitude nuclear detonations can fry electronics across entire continents. No power, no communications, no internet. Which means even survival isn't enough. The president must remain connected. And that's why all critical systems, planes, bunkers, command centers, are hardened against EMP. Because losing communication means losing control. Let's shift perspective. What happens after the initial strike? Where does the president go? One possible destination is the Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center, a hidden underground complex designed to house government leadership during nuclear war. Self-sufficient, secure, unknown to most of the public. But here's the catch. Even this bunker isn't meant to last forever. It's a bridge, not a solution. This is where things get strategic, because survival isn't just about the president, it's about the system. Plans exist to ensure that even if Washington is destroyed, the United States still functions. Backup leaders, distributed command centers, mobile military authority. Because the goal isn't just survival, it's continuity. Here's something most people don't realize. The most survivable part of the U.S. nuclear command structure isn't on land. It's underwater. Ballistic missile submarines, like those carrying Trident II D5s, remain hidden in the oceans at all times. Undetectable, unreachable. Even if the entire country is hit, they survive. And that guarantees one thing: retaliation is always possible. Let's pause again. You might think that the goal is to keep the president alive at all costs, but that's not entirely true. The real goal is this: maintain the ability to command the United States. If the president survives but cannot communicate, cannot issue orders, cannot control forces, then strategically, it's the same as losing him. Adversaries know all of this, which is why they may attempt a decapitation strike, targeting leadership directly. Weapons like hypersonic glide vehicles, again like Avangard, are specifically designed to reduce reaction time and hit high-value targets fast. That's why mobility is everything.
Want to lose weight without losing muscle? Factor got me there. I was tired of all the cutting and bulking cycle.
Here's something rarely discussed. Surviving nuclear war isn't just physical, it's psychological. Imagine making decisions while knowing millions may already be gone. Imagine commanding a nation that may no longer fully exist. The president isn't just protected from missiles, he's expected to function under unimaginable pressure. If the president survives the first strike, that's only the beginning. Now comes fallout, infrastructure collapse, global instability, and possible second strikes. Everything you've just heard is designed to ensure one thing: nuclear war never happens. Because the entire system, missiles, submarines, bunkers, aircraft, is built on deterrence. The idea that no matter what happens, the United States will respond. And that makes the cost too high for anyone to try. The president can survive. The system can endure. Command can continue. But the question isn't just whether the president lives, it's this: what kind of world would still exist if he does? At first, it feels like nothing. No heat touches your skin. No sound breaks the silence. The city around you stands perfectly still, like it was paused mid-life. Dust rises under your boots, barely noticeable. The wind carries it away. And then, the device in your hand begins to react. A soft click, then another. then a rapid, chaotic crackling that fills the silence. Because what surrounds you is not destruction in the way we understand it. It's something far worse. It's contamination that doesn't end. And these places, real places still existing today, are not just reminders of past disasters. They are fragments of a future that could still happen. When people think about nuclear events, they imagine the moment of impact, the blinding flash, the shockwave tearing through buildings, the mushroom cloud rising into the sky. But all of that is over in seconds. Radiation is what remains. And radiation doesn't behave like anything else we know. It doesn't burn like fire or move like water. It embeds itself into the world, into the ground, into the air, into living tissue. The real danger begins after everything looks calm again. Some radioactive elements decay quickly, disappearing within days or weeks. But others, like cesium-137 or strontium-90, remain active for decades, slowly poisoning ecosystems. And then there are elements like plutonium, which can persist for tens of thousands of years, effectively outliving entire civilizations. What makes this even more dangerous is how radiation interacts with the human body. It doesn't need to kill instantly. It only needs to break things at the smallest level. Inside your body, radiation damages DNA. Cells begin to malfunction. Some die, others mutate. Over time, organs fail, cancers develop, and systems that once worked perfectly begin to collapse. When Reactor 4 exploded at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, it didn't just release energy. It released the core of a nuclear reactor directly into the environment. Inside the destroyed structure, nuclear fuel melted together with concrete and metal, forming a substance known as corium. One of these masses, later called the elephant's foot, was so radioactive that standing near it for minutes would have been fatal when it first formed. But the real transformation happened outside. Radioactive particles were carried into the atmosphere and then settled unevenly across the surrounding region. This created a patchwork of contamination, where one area could be relatively safe, while another, just meters away, remained dangerously radioactive. The forest nearby absorbed an enormous dose of radiation almost instantly. Trees turned reddish-brown and died, giving rise to what is now known as the Red Forest. Even today, disturbing that soil can release radioactive dust back into the air, effectively reactivating contamination decades later. This is one of the most important lessons Chernobyl teaches. Radiation doesn't simply fade away, it cycles. Wind lifts particles, rain pushes them deeper. Fires can redistribute them again. The environment itself becomes a storage system for contamination. And yet life returned. Animals moved back into the zone. Wolves roam freely. Birds nest in abandoned structures. From a distance, it looks like nature has reclaimed the land. But closer studies reveal something different. Higher mutation rates, reduced lifespans, subtle biological damage that doesn't stop the ecosystem, but reshapes it. Chernobyl isn't healed. It's adapted to being damaged. At the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, the disaster unfolded without a massive explosion tearing material into the sky. Instead, it moved quietly downward and outward. When the reactors overheated, nuclear fuel melted and formed corium, similar to Chernobyl. But in this case, the material interacted with groundwater. Water flowed through the site, became contaminated, and had to be captured and stored. Thousands of tanks now hold treated radioactive water, each one a temporary solution to a longer-term problem. But water doesn't stay still. Some contamination reached the ocean, where it entered a completely different system. Unlike land, where contamination can remain localized, the ocean distributes it through currents that span entire continents. This doesn't mean the ocean became instantly deadly. It means the contamination spreads, dilutes, and integrates. Small organisms absorb radioactive particles. Larger organisms eat them. The process continues upward through the food chain, concentrating radiation at each level. Eventually, it reaches humans. Fukushima revealed something critical. Radiation doesn't just destroy environments, it becomes part of them. At Bikini Atoll, nuclear detonations didn't just destroy structures, they transformed an entire ecosystem. One of the most powerful tests, Castle Bravo, released far more energy than expected. Fallout spread across nearby islands, contaminating soil and vegetation. Over time, something unexpected became clear. The danger wasn't just in the air or on the surface. It was in the food. Plants absorbed radioactive particles from the soil. Coconuts, a primary food source, became contaminated. People returning years later were exposed not through direct radiation, but through daily consumption of local resources. This is one of the most dangerous aspects of radiation. It hides inside normal life. You eat, you drink, you live, and slowly it accumulates. Even today, parts of Bikini Atoll remain unsafe for long-term habitation, not because they look destroyed, but because they are fundamentally changed. Each of these places represents a different aspect of radiation. Chernobyl shows how land becomes contaminated then remains unpredictable. Fukushima shows how radiation moves through water and spreads across ecosystems. Bikini Atoll shows how ecosystems integrate contamination into daily life. Now, imagine all of this happening at once. In a nuclear war, multiple detonations would inject massive amounts of radioactive material into the atmosphere. Fallout would spread across continents. Water systems would carry contamination further. Agricultural land would become unreliable or unstable. Even regions far from direct strikes would face consequences. Food chains would break down. Clean water would become scarce. The global system that supports modern life would begin to collapse, not instantly, but progressively. And this is where the real danger lies, not in the moment of destruction, but in what follows. These places already exist. You can stand in them today. You can walk through abandoned streets in Pripyat. You can measure radiation levels in the soil. You can see nature growing over structures that were never meant to be left behind. They're not theoretical, they're evidence. Each one is a fragment of a larger picture. And when combined, they show something deeply unsettling. Nuclear events don't just destroy cities. They create conditions where rebuilding may not be possible. Not because everything is gone, but because everything that remains is no longer safe.
J. Robert Oppenheimer once famously said, "Now I am death, destroyer of worlds," and he was right. But why? It's because he led a group of the world's top scientists during World War II to create the first atomic bomb. The power of this bomb was like nothing humankind had ever seen before. When these bombs were unleashed on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it demonstrated the world-crushing capabilities of the weapon. But how does an atomic bomb actually work? The bomb's origins are actually rooted in Einstein's famous equation, E equals mc squared. This stated that energy is equivalent to mass times the speed of light squared. A simple way of breaking this down is that there is an equivalence between mass and energy. If you could change some matter rapidly into energy, then you could harness that energy in a nuclear reactor, or as Oppenheimer's team did, seal it inside a bomb ready to cause devastation. The problem that the Manhattan Project had when developing the atomic bomb is that they needed a certain kind of uranium. Most uranium is the kind with isotope 238. In fact, around 99% of the world's uranium has this property. The issue with this is that it's not as volatile as its very rare cousin, uranium-235. Oppenheimer's team needed to be creative and manipulate the uranium they had to separate the material they needed for a massive reaction from uranium ore. The team used several methods to achieve this result, known as uranium enrichment, which included centrifuges, gaseous diffusion, thermal diffusion, and electromagnetic separation. But how did the bombs actually detonate? Although many tests of nuclear bombs have been
In the next 5 seconds, you'll see an idea go from sketch to clay to shape, and become a website.
The two that were dropped by the US on Japan to end the Second World War. Although the two bombs had similar reactions that we've already explored, their method of detonation was very different. The first bomb was called Little Boy. This was the one dropped on Hiroshima that was responsible for at least 70,000 deaths. The bomb had two separate pieces of uranium, neither of which was big enough to achieve critical mass. These pieces were kept apart until the very last minute. When the bomb was ready to be exploded, these pieces were smashed together using a mechanism similar to a gun. One piece of uranium was shot down a smoothbore gun barrel and smashed into the other piece. The impact got the critical mass needed and generated the first nuclear explosion in warfare. Fat Man was the bomb detonated over Nagasaki. This used the less reactive plutonium-239. The gun method was deemed not strong enough to achieve the blast required. Fission would have started too early, and the reaction would have been too slow for the bomb to reach a critical mass. The solution to this was a hollow sphere of subcritical plutonium found in the belly of the bomb. This was surrounded by conventional explosives. When this was set off, it created a huge implosion which increased the density of the plutonium when everything was smashed together. This allowed it to create a supercritical state. It's now easy to see how Oppenheimer described himself as a destroyer of worlds. The energy created by the two A-bombs at the end of the war was like nothing the planet had ever seen before. And it was all created by manipulating the most volatile materials that the scientist and his team could get their hands on.
You're scrolling your phone, sipping coffee, maybe sitting in traffic. Then everything stops. The lights die. Your car stalls. Planes drop from the sky. Somewhere far off, a mushroom cloud blooms on the horizon. You think, this can't be real. But it is. In 2025, nuclear war isn't a Cold War ghost. It's a real modern threat. Faster missiles, smarter warheads, fragile diplomacy, and just one mistake away from the end of civilization. This is what happens when that mistake is made. It doesn't begin with nukes. It begins with a spark. Tensions boil over. A Chinese blockade of Taiwan. Russian troops cross into the Baltics. North Korea launches a missile that strays into Japanese territory. Panic, confusion, scrambled communication, and then a false radar warning. Or maybe it's real. Military leaders have to decide, launch now or risk losing everything. The US initiates launch on warning. The US nuclear triad activates. 400 Minuteman III ICBMs erupt from hardened silos across the Midwest. Each can carry up to 3 warheads, though most are armed with a single W-87 or W-78 warhead. 14 Ohio-class submarines, each capable of launching 20 Trident II D5 SLBMs, release their payloads from underwater bastions in the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. These missiles can carry up to 14 independently targetable warheads. B-2 stealth bombers and B-52 Stratofortresses take off from bases like Whiteman Air Force Base and Barksdale Air Force Base. They carry a mix of gravity bombs, B-61 and B-83, and air-launched cruise missiles, AGM-8060s. Targets include Russian and Chinese missile silos, radar sites, mobile ICBM launch zones, submarine pens, and command bunkers. The logic? Eliminate their ability to strike back, but it's already too late. In response, Russia unleashes its full arsenal. RS-28 Sarmat or Satan II ICBMs launch from silos across Siberia. Each missile carries up to 15 MIRVs with yields of 750 kilotons to 1 megaton. Boreas-class submarines, each with 16 Bulava SLBMs, fire from patrol zones in the Arctic and Pacific. Avangard hypersonic glide vehicles capable of Mach 20 speeds and maneuvering flight paths descend on U.S. missile defense bunkers and continuity of government sites. Air-launched cruise missiles like the KH-102 and ship-based Calibers swarm toward NATO capitals. Russia activates its perimeter system, a last-resort automated retaliatory network. Even if Moscow is obliterated, the remaining nuclear forces will launch. China, hit by American warheads, retaliates. DF-41 ICBMs, with range over 12,000 kilometers and up to 10 MIRVs each, launch from deep inland silos and mobile launchers. JL-3 SLBMs streak from Type O-94A and newer Type O-96 submarines hidden in the Western Pacific. DF-17 and DF-27 hypersonic missiles target Guam, Hawaii, and carrier strike groups. Chinese targets include U.S. bases in the Pacific, Anderson Air Force Base and Yokosuka Naval Base, missile fields in Montana and North Dakota, and tech hubs like Silicon Valley. The conflict spreads like wildfire. India and Pakistan exchange tactical news. Delhi, Islamabad, Lahore, and Mumbai vanish in flames. North Korea fires Hwasong-17S and KN-23 short-range missiles toward Seoul, Tokyo, and possibly California. Some reach targets, others are intercepted. Israel, under threat from Iranian missiles and Hezbollah attacks, launches Jericho-3 missiles and Popeye Turbo cruise missiles from Dolphin-class submarines. Cities from Tehran to Tel Aviv, Seoul to Karachi are incinerated. The first warhead strike, Washington, D.C. is turned into a crater. The White House, Pentagon, gone. Moscow is obliterated. Berlin, London, Paris, reduced to fire and ash. New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago, erased from the map. Hundreds of thousands die instantly. Millions more burn, suffocate, or are crushed in collapsing buildings. 44 ground-based interceptors at Fort Greely and Vandenberg Air Force Base target incoming ICBMs. THAAD and Aegis systems fire in defense of NATO and East Asian allies. Patriot batteries surround critical command centers and air bases. They stop some, but it's a numbers game. Hypersonics slip through. MIRVs release decoys. 1,500 plus warheads still get through, many with 500 to 800 kiloton yields. Entire cities become furnaces. Temperatures reach 1,500 degrees Celsius. Firestorms create hurricane-force winds, pulling oxygen from the air. Skyscrapers become torches. Entire neighborhoods vanish. Clouds of radioactive dust rise into the atmosphere. Fallout spreads via the jet stream. The American Midwest is blanketed in ash. Central Europe glows with residual radiation. East Asia's breadbasket turns toxic. Even untouched nations face agricultural and health. The internet is gone. Power grids are shattered. The survivors? Trapped in bunkers, subway tunnels, or mountain caves. Battling radiation sickness, starvation, and psychological trauma. Waiting, not for rescue, but for the slow death that follows. Nuclear war is not just possible. It's one chain reaction away. One error, one miscalculation is all it takes. If nuclear war begins, there is no winner. Only ash, silence, and regret. The clock is ticking. If nuclear war started tonight, most Americans already believe they know where the danger is. New York, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C. Those cities would almost certainly be destroyed within minutes. But here's the terrifying truth most people never realize. Some of the first nuclear explosions wouldn't happen in cities at all. They would happen in places that look quiet, empty, even peaceful. Wide farmland, remote plains, small towns few people have ever heard of. Because nuclear war isn't just about killing civilians. It's about destroying weapons, infrastructure, and the ability to fight back. And many of those targets sit far away from major cities. In fact, several states that feel safe today would actually be among the first places hit in a nuclear war. Meanwhile, a handful of states might quietly sit near the bottom of every nuclear target list. Not completely safe, but far less likely to experience a direct nuclear strike. To understand which states might survive, we need to understand how nuclear targets are chosen. Military planners don't just randomly pick cities. They follow a very specific strategy. And the first targets are almost always the same: nuclear weapons. The most important targets in nuclear war are the weapons themselves: intercontinental ballistic missile silos, strategic bomber bases, submarine ports. These systems allow a country to launch nuclear.
If your pet goes from drooly to droolier, know where to go. Veg, the better, kinder ER for pets.
Likely experience dozens of nuclear detonations within the first hour of war. Because these states contain hundreds of underground missile silos. Each silo could receive its own nuclear warhead. Not because anyone wants to destroy Montana, but because destroying those missiles could prevent retaliation. The second type of target is leadership. Countries attempt to destroy command and control infrastructure, places that coordinate military response, facilities like the Pentagon, NORAD command centers, strategic communication hubs, which makes locations like Washington, D.C. and Colorado Springs extremely high-priority targets. Only after those targets come large population centers. Cities represent economic power, industry, and transportation networks. Destroying them creates chaos and cripples the country's ability to recover. Which means places like New York, Chicago, Houston, and Los Angeles would almost certainly be attacked. Once you remove all those high-priority targets from the map, something interesting happens. A few states remain that simply aren't very valuable nuclear targets, and that dramatically reduces the chance they would be struck. Maine sits quietly in the far northeast corner of the United States. Forests, small towns, rocky coastline. For most of its history, it has remained one of the most peaceful states in the country. And strangely enough, that may work in its favor during nuclear war. Maine has very little strategic military infrastructure. No nuclear missile fields, no major bomber bases, no massive military command centers. And its population is relatively small compared to other states along the East Coast, which means nuclear planners would likely focus their warheads elsewhere. But Maine isn't completely safe, because just a few hundred miles south sits one of the largest population corridors in the world, the Northeast Megalopolis: Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Washington. If several of those cities were destroyed, radioactive fallout could drift north depending on wind patterns, so Maine might avoid the initial explosions, but the aftermath could still be dangerous. Just west of Maine sits another state that rarely appears on nuclear target maps: Vermont. It's small, quiet, mostly rural, and in nuclear war planning, that matters. Because the primary purpose of nuclear weapons is to destroy things that affect military power, and Vermont has very few of those, which means attacking Vermont provides very little military advantage. At first glance, Oregon might seem like a risky place to be during a nuclear war. After all, it sits directly on the Pacific Ocean, and the Pacific is home to many U.S. naval forces. But compared to its neighbors, Oregon is relatively quiet,
California hosts massive military infrastructure, naval bases, Air Force installations, huge industrial centers. Washington State hosts one of the most critical nuclear submarine bases in the United States, which makes it an extremely valuable target. Oregon, by comparison, sits between these two heavily defended regions, and that reduces its strategic importance. The state has moderate population, limited strategic military targets, large rural regions. This one may surprise you, because South Dakota sits in the middle of the United States. But unlike neighboring states like Montana and North Dakota, South Dakota does not host large nuclear missile fields, which dramatically changes its strategic value. Many of the most heavily targeted locations in the United States are missile silos scattered across the northern plains. Hundreds of underground launch facilities, each one capable of launching an intercontinental nuclear missile. During a nuclear war, enemy warheads would target these silos in an attempt to destroy them before they launch. But South Dakota contains far fewer of these strategic assets. Its population is small, its industry is limited, and its military infrastructure is relatively modest. When researchers study nuclear targeting maps, one state often appears near the bottom of the list: Idaho. And the reasons are surprisingly simple. Idaho has no massive population centers, no major nuclear missile fields, very limited strategic military infrastructure. Much of the state is mountainous wilderness, or farmland, or small rural communities. From a military perspective, destroying Idaho provides very little strategic advantage, which means nuclear planners would likely allocate their warheads elsewhere. Another factor working in Idaho's favor is geography. The state sits far from many of the largest coastal cities in the United States, which could reduce the impact of radioactive fallout compared to regions along the East Coast or Pacific Coast. For these reasons, Idaho is often considered one of the least likely states to experience a direct nuclear strike. If hundreds of nuclear weapons detonated across major cities and industrial zones, massive firestorms could send smoke into the upper atmosphere, blocking sunlight, lowering global temperatures, and devastating agriculture. Scientists estimate global food production could collapse for years. So, are these states safe? Not exactly. In nuclear war, nowhere on Earth is truly safe. But some places would face far fewer direct nuclear strikes than others. Certain fight for survival. Because in nuclear war, the most dangerous place isn't always the biggest city. Sometimes, it's the places hiding the most powerful weapons. And the safest places are often the ones the world simply forgets. Imagine a city glowing brighter than the sun for a split second. An invisible shockwave races through the air, flattening everything in its path. A fireball so hot, it vaporizes steel, concrete, and flesh alike. This is not science fiction. It's the brutal reality behind every nuclear explosion ever detonated. The true scale of a nuclear blast is a terrifying force of nature, shaped by physics, but felt deeply by humanity. On August 6, 1945, the uranium gun-type bomb known as Little Boy detonated about 600 meters above Hiroshima. Weighing 4,400 kilograms, stretching 3 meters long and 71 centimeters in diameter, it unleashed a 15-kiloton explosion. The fireball grew to over 280 meters wide in milliseconds, reaching temperatures hotter than the sun's surface, over 5 million degrees Celsius, vaporizing everything beneath it. The resulting shockwave produced overpressures above 20 psi within a 1-kilometer radius, crushing reinforced concrete buildings. Thermal radiation caused third-degree burns up to 3 kilometers away and ignited fires across the city. Immediate fatalities reached 70,000 to 80,000, with total casualties surpassing 140,000 by year's end. Survivors suffered from the searing heat, deadly radiation sickness, and psychological trauma that lasted decades. The B-61 family is a shape-shifting beast of destruction, offering yields from a tactical 0.3 kilotons to a strategic 340 kilotons. This thermonuclear gravity bomb, roughly 3.5 meters long and weighing 320 kilograms, can be dropped from a variety of aircraft. At maximum yield, the B-61 produces a fireball about 700 meters wide, incinerating all within its core. The blast wave shatters windows 20 kilometers away and flattens buildings within 5 kilometers. Thermal radiation would cause lethal third-degree burns up to 15 kilometers out, setting fires that rage uncontrollably. The B-61's variable yield makes it suitable for different mission profiles, from battlefield strikes to strategic city destruction. Fallout patterns would cause long-lasting contamination, threatening public health and agriculture far beyond the blast zone. The Minuteman III, a solid-fuel intercontinental ballistic missile weighing 35,000 kilograms and measuring 18 meters long, carries up to 3 warheads, each delivering 300 to 500 kilotons. Capable of striking targets 13,000 kilometers away within 30 minutes, a single 500 kiloton warhead detonating above Vladivostok city center would generate a fireball over 1 kilometer wide, vaporizing everything below. The blast wave would crush buildings within 5 kilometers, producing overpressures exceeding 20 psi. Thermal radiation would cause third-degree burns up to 10 kilometers away, igniting catastrophic fires. Casualties? Over 1 million dead, millions displaced, a city erased in minutes, followed by months of chaos and suffering. From stealthy Ohio-class submarines, the Trident II D5 launches missiles 13.4 meters long, weighing 59,000 kilograms, carrying up to 14 warheads ranging from 100 to 455 kilotons each, capable of striking targets more than 11,000 kilometers away. A 455 kiloton warhead exploding over St. Petersburg would create a fireball 1.2 kilometers wide, instantly vaporizing the center. The blast wave levels structures within 5 kilometers, while thermal radiation causes deadly burns up to 15 kilometers out, igniting massive fires across the city. The death toll would exceed 1.5 million, with infrastructure destroyed and radiation poisoning lingering for years. The stealth of its underwater launch means no warning, a silent nightmare. The Avangard hypersonic glide vehicle, launched atop an ICBM, speeds at Mach 20 plus, evading missile defenses with its eye maneuverability. Carrying a 2 megaton warhead, it produces a 1.5 kilometer wide fireball and a destructive blast wave exceeding 10 kilometers, with thermal radiation igniting fires 20 kilometers away. Its hypersonic speed and unpredictable flight path leave almost no time for detection or interception. Detonated over New York City, millions could die in seconds, with little to no warning. China's DF-5 liquid-fueled ICBM, standing 33 meters tall and weighing 183 kilograms, can deliver a 5 megaton warhead more than 13,000 kilometers away. A detonation over Tokyo would produce a fireball nearly 2 kilometers wide, vaporizing central wards instantly. The shockwave would demolish buildings within 15 kilometers, while thermal radiation would ignite fires stretching 30 kilometers beyond. Over 5 million would die immediately, with devastation spanning miles. Russia's RS-28 Sarmat is a monstrous 35-meter-tall ICBM, weighing over 200,000 kilograms, capable of carrying up to 10 warheads each, packing 10 to 50 megatons of explosive power. A 50-megaton warhead detonating over Chicago's downtown generates a fireball nearly 6 kilometers wide, instantly vaporizing the city and surrounding suburbs. The shockwave flattens buildings up to 40 kilometers away, with thermal radiation causing fatal burns up to 100 kilometers out, sparking an unstoppable firestorm. The scale of radioactive fallout from such an explosion would contaminate vast areas across multiple states, forcing mass evacuations and rendering land uninhabitable for decades. Fallout particles would enter the atmosphere, potentially triggering global climate effects by injecting soot and radioactive materials high into the stratosphere, a nuclear winter scenario. Immediate deaths would number in the tens of millions, with radioactive fallout poisoning half a continent for years to come. Poseidon is a nuclear-powered underwater drone carrying an estimated 100 megaton warhead, traveling at over 100 kilometers per hour underwater, and capable of traveling thousands of kilometers stealthily. A detonation in San Francisco Bay would create a massive underwater shockwave and tsunami, devastating the coastline. Radioactive fallout would poison the Pacific coast for decades, rendering the region uninhabitable. Millions could drown or die from radiation poisoning. This weapon doesn't just destroy cities, it contaminates entire ecosystems in coastal regions for generations, crippling economies and livelihoods. The world balances on a knife's edge. One spark, one miscalculation, or one choice away from nuclear catastrophe. The true scale of nuclear explosions demands we act before the next blast changes everything. Will humanity learn in time, or be consumed by its own destructive power?
Imagine the unimaginable. The world's largest superpower, the United States, comes under a nuclear threat as missiles rain down from the sky. ICBMs, or intercontinental ballistic missiles, hurtle toward American soil, launched from distant lands like Russia or North Korea. It's a nightmare scenario, one that seems too terrifying to entertain. But the reality is, nuclear ICBMs could hit U.S. soil within 30 minutes after launch. The question is, can the U.S. defend itself against this kind of attack? Before we explore the United States defense systems, it's essential to understand the missile threats it's up against. These are no ordinary missiles. They are weapons capable of annihilating cities and altering the course of history. Russia remains one of the U.S.'s most significant nuclear threats, given its extensive arsenal and its position as a major military power. Russia's nuclear doctrine allows for the first use of nuclear weapons, particularly in response to conventional threats or in regional conflicts. Some key Russian nuclear capabilities include the RS-28 Sarmat or Satan II ICBM, a heavy liquid-fueled missile capable of carrying multiple warheads, up to 15 MIRVs. This missile is designed to penetrate missile defense systems and target major U.S. cities or military installations. Range over 18,000 kilometers or 11,200 miles. Payload up to 40 megatons of TNT in a single warhead with multiple warhead options. R-36M or SS-18 Satan. Known as one of the most powerful ICBMs in the world, the R-36M remains a cornerstone of Russia's nuclear deterrence. Payload 10 MIRVs, each with a thermonuclear warhead. Range 16,000 kilometers or about 10,000 miles. Russia has developed the 3M-22 Zircon, a hypersonic missile capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. Its speed and maneuverability make it extremely difficult to intercept. Speed, Mach 8 to 9, or around 9,800 to 11,000 kilometers per hour. Range up to 1,000 kilometers, or 620 miles. China's rapid modernization of its nuclear arsenal is aimed at creating a credible deterrent against the U.S. and other powers. China maintains a no-first-use nuclear policy, but its military doctrines have evolved, with increasing emphasis on the potential use of nuclear weapons in a conflict. DF-41 ICBM, China's most advanced ICBM, capable of carrying multiple nuclear warheads. The DF-41 is a critical part of China's nuclear deterrent, designed to counter U.S. and Russian missile defense systems. Range 12,000 kilometers, or about 7,500 miles. Payload up to 10 MIRV.
Kayak smart filters help me find the perfect hotel room.
Is a liquid-fueled intercontinental ballistic missile, or ICBM, developed by China. The DF-5 is capable of reaching over 12,000 kilometers, or 7,500 miles, allowing it to target virtually any location on the globe, including the continental United States. The DF-5 is designed to carry a single nuclear warhead, although it has been rumored that some variants could potentially carry multiple independently targetable reentry vehicles, or MIRVs, allowing for multiple targets to be attacked with a single missile. North Korea. North Korea's nuclear ambitions have become a significant point of tension. While its nuclear arsenal is relatively small compared to Russia or China, its ballistic missile technology and willingness to escalate confrontations make it a potent threat. Hwasong-15 ICBM. North Korea's longest-range missile, capable of reaching the U.S. mainland, particularly the West Coast. Range over 13,000 kilometers, or 8,100 miles. Typically carries a single warhead, but there are indications that North Korea may seek to develop MIRVs. Hwasong-17 ICBM. An even larger missile that has been tested, with the potential range to target U.S. cities across the country. Range up to 15,000 kilometers, or 9,320 miles. Payload, likely capable of carrying multiple warheads. The United States possesses one of the world's most advanced nuclear arsenals, with approximately 5,550 nuclear warheads, both deployed and non-deployed. The B-83 gravity bomb is one of the most potent weapons in the U.S. nuclear inventory, designed to penetrate deep underground facilities. It's a powerful tool for targeting fortified sites that are difficult to destroy with conventional weapons. Yield range, up to 1.2 megatons, making it one of the most powerful weapons in the U.S. arsenal. Delivery platforms, strategic bombers such as the B-2 Spirit and B-52 Stratofortress. Minuteman III ICBMs, or intercontinental ballistic missiles. Deployed in 1970 and continually upgraded for reliability and effectiveness, the Minuteman III ICBM is a key part of the U.S. nuclear triad. Payload can carry up to 3 MIRVs, each with a nuclear warhead. Guidance, advanced inertial navigation system for pinpoint accuracy. Speed reaches up to Mach 23, or about 28,400 kilometers per hour, or about 17,600 miles per hour, enabling rapid global reach. Trident II SLBMs, or submarine-launched ballistic missiles. Known for their precision, stealth, and long range, Trident II SLBMs are deployed from nuclear-powered submarines and form a key part of the U.S. deterrent strategy. Payload can carry up to 12 MIRVs, depending on treaty constraints. Guidance system. Stellar inertial navigation, ensuring high accuracy even at extreme ranges. Range, approximately 12,000 kilometers or 7,500 miles. In the event of a nuclear conflict, the safety of the U.S. president is paramount, not just for national leadership, but to maintain continuity of command and ensure that retaliatory actions can be taken if necessary. The U.S. has a comprehensive and well-established protocol in place for protecting the president during a nuclear attack or crisis. One of the key tools for the U.S. president in a nuclear emergency is a nuclear football, a briefcase that contains everything the president needs to authorize a nuclear strike, including authentication codes. The satchel includes classified communication and authentication codes required for verifying the president's identity and transmitting orders for a nuclear strike. Strike options. It also contains predetermined nuclear strike options, providing the president with a range of military responses in the event of a nuclear attack. Secure communication equipment. The football is equipped with communication tools, including satellite phones and encrypted radio systems, ensuring the president can maintain communication with military leaders and other key officials. The football is always with the president, carried by a military aide wherever the president goes. In case of a nuclear attack or other existential threats to the nation, the U.S. president has access to Air Force One, a specially equipped aircraft designed to keep the president safe while allowing him to exercise command over the military. Air Force One can function as a flying command center. The aircraft is capable of controlling military operations, including directing nuclear retaliation, even if the president is far from Washington, D.C. In the event of a nuclear strike or national emergency, the continuity of government or COG system ensures that the president, along with other key leaders, can remain in command. The U.S. government maintains underground facilities that can house the president, vice president, and other high-ranking officials in case of a nuclear attack. These facilities, like Raven Rock Mountain Complex and Mount Weather, are designed to withstand nuclear blasts and provide shelter and communication capabilities. Imagine it's the middle of the night at NORAD's headquarters in Colorado Springs. Monitors light up with a sudden burst of activity. ICBMs have been launched from Russian territory. Within seconds, the U.S.'s early warning systems kick into high gear. Satellites detect missile heat signatures,